It all started about 10 years ago, when monster genes began to awaken in people all over the world. With the awakening of this gene, man himself turned into a monster, seeking to destroy everything around him. From that very day on, the consciousness of those who had not converted was controlled only by a deep feeling of fear. Our hero, Dale, was also unlucky enough to awaken as a monster and even become their master. Driven by a monster's instinct, he played a significant role in the destruction of his home world. But no one expected that the person who converted would be able to retain his humanity. But of course, without outside help, this would simply be impossible. Standing up for the people, Xenia tried her best to bring her friend back to consciousness. But the monster didn't hear her at all, reducing all her efforts to zero. Despite this, Xenia believed in him until the very end. And at the last moment before the blow, Dale was able to stop and not kill her. Despite the approach of the monsters, Xenia remained by his side, never ceasing to believe that her words and actions would reach her friend. And the hero had to fight the consciousness of the monster inside, striving to finish what he started. In the end, the monster's consciousness prevailed in this unequal battle, and with his own hands, Dale destroyed Xenia's life. It was her death that served as the trigger for Dale's awakening. The realization of what he had done finally made the hero wake up. The monsters surrounding him immediately rushed towards their victim. The anger, rage, and despair that overwhelmed Dale awakened in him the desire to destroy all demons along with this world. But his strength was not enough to stand against several dozen strong opponents. The only thing Dale felt before his death was regret that he had not been able to wake up earlier. As if hearing his wish, the world made a concession to him, and at the very last moment of his death, transferred him back to the past. Thanks to a receipt left on the couch, Dale learned that he had returned a year earlier. The hero remembered this day very well because tomorrow he would learn that the demon gene was stored in his DNA. After that, they will put a bug on him and everyone will humiliate him, fear him, and turn him into a mutant outcast. He was distracted from his memories of the upcoming events by a female voice coming from the shower. Although Dale could not be called a good person now, in this life he was determined to protect Xenia. He couldn't change the fact that he had monster genes in his body, but he could try to keep the situation under his control. Dale had another year to prepare for his awakening as a monster before he became one, and during that time he had to prepare for his awakening as a monster. But the outburst of his strong emotions provoked an early mutation in him. Dale completely forgot about such an important factor and so carelessly crossed the line, which became his end in the past. Just at that moment, very inopportunely, a girl came out of the shower. The monster's genes could not be put to sleep, so Dale had to restrain them by taking control of his emotions. It was here that the solution to the problem that had arisen came to him, to satisfy the hunger of the monster inside. Since time was short, he decided to get down to business as soon as possible. So, quickly getting dressed, he harshly told Anna that he had simply used her and now he had to go. He announced the end of the fun to the other girls waiting outside the door. His words provoked a furious protest from the fair sex. Wanting to snatch at least a drop of his attention, they all pounced on him, begging him to spend the night with them. Confused about how he had managed to glue them all together, Dale struggled to break free from their clutches. He didn't feel any regret about it because in the past, as soon as they found out about the gene, they themselves ran away from it. Only Xenia, both in this life and in the past, remained to wait for him. Knowing full well how the evening would end, she bought Dale some medicine to heal his emotional wounds and waited to give it to him. But her friend's behavior was very different from usual, which greatly confused her. Dale once again failed to keep his emotions under control, and now his inner monster was bursting out. The hero's strength to restrain him was waning, so he asked Xenia to return home. And he himself rushed away in search of food for his demon, to the bewildered cries of his friend. In order not to attract unnecessary attention to himself, he bought a raincoat in the first store he came across. And now, without the threat of being discovered, he walked precisely towards the smell of food. Just at this time, an explosion occurred in the place that attracted his attention. People ran away from the crowd of monsters, desperately hoping to save their lives. Dale didn't even flinch at the sight of the impending danger. Instead, he froze in anticipation. In an attempt to stop the monster, one of the men pushed the hero forward. But he flew past Dale as if he hadn't noticed him. The fact that the monsters now accepted him as one of their own undoubtedly pleased the guy. But he wasn't going to interfere and help anyone, because there was a special department for fighting monsters for that. They arrived at the scene quickly enough and created a stone wall around the monsters, completely unaware of the hero who slipped past. Inside, the battle was also raging. One of the rescuers lost his arm while saving 3 children from the clutches of a monster. But even so, His skill allowed him to continue the fight. Just when he was beginning to realize he couldn't handle them all, Dale appeared in front of her out of nowhere. Kyle wasn't exactly weak, but he was shocked that the boy had taken out a high-level monster with one blow. Quickly distracted from these thoughts, Kyle shouted at the hero to immediately run away with the children and leave the monster to him. But Dale had other plans. He couldn't let anyone see him eating lunch. That's why he knocked out the rescuer with one blow. And after that, he switched to the remaining demon, who would become his prey. Drawing on his experiences from his past life, Dale fought without holding back. The monster was no match for the Demon Lord's power. That's why I desperately tried to convey to the guy that there was no point in bearers of royal power killing each other. But Dale ignored him, mercilessly biting into the monster's rough flesh, absorbing its strength at the same time. At the same time, the rescuers outside noticed that the monsters had suddenly become much weaker. This made them feel ignorant because it meant that the main monster of the second level had been destroyed. Having dealt with the remaining demons outside, the rescuers hurried inside to their friend. Even though he had lost his arm, they were happy to see Kyle alive. But he admitted that the monster did not fall by his hand and told about everything he witnessed. The story of an ordinary guy eating a monster caused great concern among his partners. Our hero, satisfied with his dinner, got rid of his cloak and was now returning home. Upon reaching his home area, Dale immediately found himself plunged into memories of the past. In that life, the area suddenly lost power and the disruption caused people's abilities to go out of control. As a result, more than 100 people died, including Senia's parents. The girl herself was seriously injured, and there was a severe burn on her face. Checking the time, Dale confirmed that there were still 4 hours left before this incident. But he was very alarmed by the fact that the streetlights were turned off ahead of time. Meanwhile, Xenia tried with all her might to contain the force of electricity that was bursting out. She didn't want anyone to get hurt because of her, but she felt like she wouldn't be able to hold back any longer. At that moment, Dale appeared through the window. He promised to help her and asked her to trust him. Xenia had no choice but to rely on him. After that, Dale boldly grabbed her hand. He needed to act quickly, so without any preparation, he threw Xenia out of the window with one jerk. The girl was instantly overcome with fear from the fall, but she could not allow herself to scream so as not to wake everyone. Almost immediately, Dale himself appeared in the air and picked up his friend in his arms. By creating a tentacle from his hand, he managed to cling to the protruding part of the roof. This way, they were able to climb onto it safely. Having released Xenia, the hero told her to release all her energy into the sky. When the girl followed his advice, Dale sighed with relief, glad that this time he had managed to help her. Only after coming to her senses after the forceful release did Xenia notice Dale's hand. When he began to tell her about his mutation, she interrupted him, covering his mouth with her hands. She was very worried about him and insisted that he not tell this to anyone else. The hero assured her that she was the only one in this world to whom he could unconditionally trust this secret. Soon, paramedics came up to the roof, wondering who exactly had released that powerful lightning bolt. Xenia immediately confessed, and the man told his subordinate to prepare 2 reagents to test her abilities. Bishop explained everything to Xenia and took a drop of her blood. He assumed that the girl was strong, but the actual result exceeded all his expectations. Our hero's blood was also taken, but he did not have any hopes because he knew that he had no abilities. But contrary to his expectations, a weak reaction of the reagent still appeared. Dale suddenly realized that this happened because he ate the monster, which in turn ate the rescuer's hand. Upon arrival at the research institute, our hero underwent several more tests to determine the percentage of the hero gene. There, it was confirmed that he had 1% that would allow him to enter the Hero Academy. The sister who conducted all the tests promised to help him with his application to the academy. But they had barely left the treatment room when they heard the news that the world record for the number of heroic genes had been broken. All the doctors ran into the room where they are now conducting tests on Xenia. Dale also decided that it was necessary to take a look at what was going on there. Inside the lab, Xenia was being tested for immunity to electricity. Listening to the researchers' cries of surprise and delight at the incredible results, Dale couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. When the voltage reached 2,000 volts, one of the researchers expressed concern for the girl's condition, but she didn't feel any discomfort at all. The increase in voltage to 3,000 volts already instilled real horror and bewilderment. At this point, Xenia suggested stopping, fearing that she might lose control further. Dale wanted to go to his friend when it was all over, but they wouldn't let him in because it was too dangerous to be near Xenia. Besides him, there were others who wanted to meet the newly minted talent. Thanks to their power and status, they had no trouble getting permission to enter. When the stranger approached Xenia, she asked him to stay away, fearing that he might get hurt. But Armin was not at all afraid of her electricity, and even offered to release the excess power using his fire. Xenia didn't trust this man, so she rejected his offer. Armin knew that they would have many more opportunities to get closer at the academy, and did not attach any importance to this. He spoke in detail about the process of admission to the academy and the division of students into groups there. He also admitted that he would like to see her on his team among the strongest students. But Armin once again refused, because she already had a partner. It wasn't hard for Armau to guess who this man was, and he didn't consider Dale a rival, considering him too weak. With the appearance of her friend, Xenia seemed to forget about Armin's existence. Here his uncle called him, saying that they urgently needed to return back to the academy. Once in his uncle's office, Armin insisted that they needed to get a genius like Xenia. But Douglas decided not to act rashly and first get rid of the obstacles in his path. Afterwards, he turned on the recording sent to him, which reported Dale's low levels of heroic genes. Having contacted the right people, he used his influence and achieved the result he and his nephew wanted. Meanwhile, Dale told Xenia that because of his mutation, he needs to eat other monsters or people in order to transform. Contrary to his expectations, the girl was not afraid and even said that there were many people in this world who deserved to be devoured. When the nurse reported that Xenia's parents had come to pick her up, the girl promised to keep everything a secret. After that, she left the ward, hurrying to her family. Dale could tell from the nurse's guilty look that she didn't have very good news for him. She admitted that his application for admission was rejected because 1% of the hero's genes does not distinguish him from an ordinary person. The hero was surprised by this, because usually even 1% would be enough to get in. Anna knew this too, so now she was in a state of genuine bewilderment and anger. Her eagerness to try again was stopped by Dale, who said that it was not worth her time. The reason for his calmness was that he had one more idea in store for how to get into the academy. But before Anna could even leave the room, she received another message saying that Dale had a chance to get in. Upon learning of our hero's chance to pass the test intended for expelled students, Armin became furious. Douglas was also extremely dissatisfied with the actions of the academy director, which could leave a mark on his reputation. So he was determined to do everything he could to prevent Dale from passing this test and disgracing the director. For the upcoming test, an order was given to prepare the necessary place and equipment. Douglas managed to bribe one of the employees by making several conditions. The head of the research department, Pavel, was also involved in this and saw his own benefit. So, with Dale's dossier in hand, they plotted his downfall. And so, 5 days later, our hero, along with the others, arrived at the testing site. Pavel was surprised by the guy's emaciated appearance, but he thought that it was only to his advantage. Dale's energy was almost depleted, and now he was fighting the strong desire to devour those around him, holding back the monster. Soon they were approached and told the rules of the test. An important condition was that only 3 participants would be able to obtain the winner's card and enter the academy. The corrupt employee deliberately inflamed the situation among the participants, turning them against Dale. His plan was successful because all the participants glared at our hero with hatred. Afterwards, when all the participants were divided into rooms, Dale realized that they were plotting against him. This guess was confirmed by the bloodstains left on the door bars, which would attract monsters. Boris did not hide his involvement and openly said that Dale would not survive the first test. He deliberately led him into a room with a broken lock that could help the guy. The plan was that the monsters would burst inside and tear him to shreds. However, our hero had a way out of this situation. The door is behind, but using it means automatic defeat. Bruce tried in every way to convince him of his worthlessness and the need to use this door. But our hero had his own plan, and thanks to his special abilities, he could turn the situation to his advantage. Returning to the control room, Bruce informed the chief that he had prepared everything and there should be no problems. Pavel even bet that Dale would run away as soon as the first monster appeared in the arena. Along with the announcement of the start of the test, several monsters were released down. Pavel and Bruce watched everything with wide smiles, waiting for the boy to decide to run. Imagine their surprise when Dale kicked open the door to his room. 3 monsters immediately rushed towards him. The hero intended to take advantage of this opportunity and feed on the monsters, but they simply ran past. It was at that moment that he remembered that the monsters accepted him as one of their own and simply ignored him. The incident left observers shocked and perplexed. So right before their eyes, Dale headed for the winner's first card. But Pavel knew that he wouldn't be able to get her that easily. Then, as if out of nowhere, David appeared behind the hero, also trying to take the card. He possessed a special spiritual ability, a psychological attack, which he decided to use on the enemy. His plan would have succeeded if Dale had not possessed strong demon genes. The monster's power shattered David's confidence and filled him with a shuddering fear. From horror and mental strain, blood began to flow from the boy's ears and nose. The monsters were also distracted by what was happening between them. Upon seeing a living man, they changed their target and rushed towards David. Dale knew that they wanted to eat his opponent and did not interfere. Instead, he decided to satisfy his own hunger. So he took advantage of the moment and, unnoticed by others, began to eat the monster's body from the inside. The demon's power he absorbed completely restored the boy's own strength, causing him to finally relax. But suddenly the monster tried to attack him. Dale was disappointed that these monsters didn't know such a thing as helping others. Looking at Dale's calm, David shouted in bewilderment that he should run, otherwise he would be torn apart. To his surprise, he managed to take out the monster with one blow. Watching this battle, it seemed to David that Dale knew all their movements by heart and was moving on an instinctive level. Thus, all three monsters were destroyed in just a couple of moments. Pavel and Boris were unhappy with this result, but the first was sure that this was far from the end. Once the monsters were destroyed, the other challengers surrounded the hero. They didn't see him as a worthy opponent and simply demanded that he give them the map. Unlike them, David saw the whole fight with his own eyes and knew that this guy was not weak, which he tried to warn the others about. But his friends ignored him, saying that he was also not worthy of being their rival. So they decided to get rid of Dale and then have a fair competition between each other. Before that, they had to deal with the newly appeared monster. Dan was one of the strongest among them, so he confidently stood before the monster, not even thinking of running away. And when the monster raised his hand to strike, he met the blow with his fist, thinking that he could easily parry it. Only his arm was broken with a crunch. With a powerful blow, the monster slammed the guy into the wall opposite. Tyler snorted in displeasure and concluded that Dale was very lucky that those monsters were weak. But as soon as he turned his gaze to our hero, he saw that he was flying towards him with his fist raised to strike. Dale belatedly realized that he needed to use his friend's hand, otherwise this blow would destroy Tyler. Therefore, he tried to restrain his strength as much as possible. But even so, the blow was too strong for an ordinary person. Fearing that the boy had died, Dale rushed to check if he was breathing. And having confirmed this, he relaxed and turned his gaze to the others, asking if they still needed his card. But here a more serious problem appeared in the form of a monster chasing its victims. Tyler cared about the lives of his friends, so he asked Dale to help them, promising a generous payment. Without thinking twice, the hero decided to help these guys. Observers did not expect such a development of events at all. To fix this, Pavel decided to take more drastic measures and ordered the release of test samples of monsters. Boris knew that these monsters were much stronger than ordinary ones, and that ordinary children would not be able to cope with them. But Pavel was sure that the boy had a special ability that would not allow him to die. He then ordered Boris to turn off the power supply in the arena when all the isolation doors opened. This order seemed completely absurd to him. He understood that in this scenario, the test participants would not be able to escape and would simply be eaten. But the head of the department didn't see any problem with this at all. When Boris decided to back down, the man's expression changed, and he reminded them that they had been generously paid for this task. To convince his accomplice, he promised to give him a few more million on top and get him out of the city. The desire to get more money prompted Boris to push the weak voice of conscience to the back of his mind. During this time, Dale dealt with the last monster in the arena. Now no one present thought that the hero had just been lucky before. Admiring his skills, Tyler even increased the promised reward for his assistance. Standing nearby, Tyler's sister Emma dealt him a hard blow, demanding that he not get into more debt. Afterwards, she apologized to Dale for her wayward brother, promising to simply treat him to dinner. The hero was about to refuse such generosity when his face changed from horror. Suddenly, another monster jumped from the ceiling right above the brother and sister. Reacting quickly, Tyler pushed his sister and friend aside. Thus, by sacrificing himself, he managed to save them both. David didn't understand what was happening at all, because they were supposed to be given half an hour to rest before the second wave. Several more monsters appeared here. Realizing that these monsters were of a higher level, Dale guessed that someone was deliberately not wanting to let him pass the test. Someone tried to escape, but Emma was too afraid for her brother. Realizing that her strength would not be enough, she desperately rushed at the monster, demanding that it release Tyler. But the monster easily pushed her away and surrounded by his fellow monsters. The girl was already preparing to say goodbye to life when the hero came to her aid. He promised that he would not let her brother die and told her to run away from here. With these words, he threw Emma to the side towards David. He himself rushed forward. Having approached the monster holding Tyler, he forced him to release his victim with a powerful blow. At that very moment, Dale threw the guy aside, remaining alone with the crowd of demons. A joyful Emma immediately ran to her brother, making sure that he was okay. As everyone else ran out of their rooms to get the card, Emma was about to do the same. But Tyler found the test too suspicious, so he stopped his sister. So they moved into the room together, already resigned to their own defeat. Dale easily defeated the monsters, eating them along the way and increasing his strength. At some point, he noticed that the hatch in the ceiling had opened again. Hoping to be saved, Tyler made his way to the escape door. But the button hanging there didn't work due to a power outage. Here, Emma reported even more terrifying news. The number of people constantly arriving at the arena increased tenfold, and now there were at least 100 of them there. Engrossed in the fight for the winner's card, the other participants were completely oblivious to what was happening around them. It was only when hundreds of demons were in the arena that they realized the full horror of the situation. From the top floor, Boris watched the hell that reigned below. Not without a hint of mockery, he thanked Dale, saying that tomorrow he would cross the border and be provided with money for the rest of his life. Without listening to his monologue, the hero threw the monster's severed arm in his direction. But when she simply flew past, the man laughed at him. But Boris had no idea that our hero's plan was different. In an instant, he was thrown down from his safe zone. Overwhelmed with horror, Boris quickly changed his tone and was now begging Dale for help. But not only did he not intend to help, but he also deliberately pushed the monster towards his new victim. This was exactly what Dale got paid for. Having devoured it, the monster's body began to rapidly transform. Thanks to his heightened level of consciousness, he recognized Dale as a traitor and ordered the other monsters to get rid of him. When all the monsters rushed at the guy at once, Pavel was sure that this time it would definitely be the end for him. He had prepared a way out for himself in advance, which he now took advantage of. Cutting off the last hope of salvation, the man destroyed the supports holding the lid from closing. He then walked over to the unconscious boys sitting at the monitoring console. To bring them to consciousness, Pavel doused them with ice water. And then he immediately attacked the poor fellows with a furious cry, demanding an explanation for the mess happening around them. When they blamed Boris for everything, they demanded that all electrical problems be fixed. It would have taken at least an hour to fix everything, so one of the guys suggested simply calling the rescuers. But Pavel was categorically against this option and threatened the guys with a fine of 100 million for his own carelessness. In the end, he achieved his goal, buying himself a whole hour to completely destroy Dale. Closed doors and inoperative cameras untied our hero's hands, giving him complete freedom. Partial transformation into a demon allowed him to easily dispose of his opponents. At the same time, he also devoured their genes. But digesting them turned out to be more difficult than he had done before. But despite this, he continued to devour monsters, striving to become stronger and once again achieve the title of king. When there was not a single living monster left in the arena, his transformed arm began to develop. From his past life, Dale knew about the existence of a common demonic network to which the brain of every monster was connected. And now, since the hero was more of a demon, this network had a strong influence on him. So he tried to take control of the situation before his consciousness was taken over by other monsters. Suddenly, he heard the voices of the surviving participants. Tyler tried to convince them not to attack Dale, who saved them, but they did not listen to him and only beat him more. And then they headed towards the seemingly wounded hero to take away all 3 of the winner's cards. Despite his own wounds, Tyler tried to stop those guys. But David's cry that if he did this he would die made him change his mind. Meanwhile, Sam and his guys had already reached Dale and attacked, demanding that he give up the cards. But suddenly a new monster appeared right out of the ground, leaving no trace of the 2 guys. The one who remained could hardly believe what had happened. Looking up, he saw a terrifying dragon looking down at him from above. Suddenly the monster let out an incredibly loud roar. It was so piercing that it caused David and his brother and sister to lose consciousness. Robert, who was closest to the monster, began to bleed from his ears and eyes. At that moment, he remembered the recent incident when this same dragon destroyed the local cleansing bureau. Now he was filled with real despair, and some kind of winner's card seemed like a real mockery to him. Just a few moments later, the dragon devoured him too. The hero didn't feel any particular joy from the fact that he would still have to deal with this monster. But he had no choice when the dragon attacked him. Dale was able to defend himself only thanks to his mutated hand. The monster turned out to be much stronger and almost destroyed the guy's hand. All this time, Xenia was in the waiting area and worried about her friend. Thanks to her power, she sensed a power outage in the training arena and became suspicious. So she approached the security guards and reported a problem with the electricity supply. Her words caused the parents present to be alarmed with horror. The guards immediately tried to shut Xenia up, saying that there couldn't be any problems there. Suddenly, the air in the room became heavy, and each parent's body was pierced by a sharp flash of pain in the area of the heart. The same pain made the guards fall to the floor. Xenia's suspicions about what was going on inside only grew stronger. So, ignoring the guards' shouts, she rushed inside. Having quickly reached the required compartment, she found a group busy restoring the blocked doors. They tried to kick her out of here, but she told about her ability and offered to help restore electricity. But the man did not believe in her abilities, and again demanded that she leave there. Xenia had no choice but to insist on her own, forcing the air to become saturated with electricity. The man was puzzled where this electricity came from, but quickly remembered the newly minted genius. The possibility that this little girl could actually unlock the windows and doors did not please him. So he demanded that Xenia stop, claiming that her abilities were unstable. Other workers shared their boss's concerns and even pulled out pistols in case she resisted. The man thought he was in a more advantageous position and continued to press the girl with his demands. When the excess electricity caused the heart to beat faster, the others became frightened and started shooting. The numerous bullets that flew at the girl jokingly scared the main guy here. He only wanted to scare her and not be responsible for someone's death. But when all the bullets had passed, he was ready to believe in God, amazed at her luck. Xenia herself was surprised, but quickly realized that the electricity was creating a magnetic field around her, distorting the trajectory of the bullets. Seriously frightened by the girl's inhuman strength, the man decided to call for help. But Xenia took all the devices and weapons from the men in one movement. When they crashed against the wall, she firmly demanded that the door to the arena be opened for her. Pavel was completely perplexed and indignant when he was informed that the electricity had returned. The hopeful employee decided to open the doors first to save other people. The button was pressed before Pavel had time to resist in any way. The next moment, all the doors began to slowly open. Xenia suddenly rushed forward, wanting to make sure that everything was okay with Dale. As soon as the girl found herself inside the arena, she saw a huge monster. At first, she was overcome with sheer terror. The men following her were also quite scared. In the very center of what was happening, Xenia saw her friend, who was about to be devoured by a monster. Determination and a desire to help instantly flared up inside her, pushing aside her fear. At the same time, entire neighborhoods outside suddenly began to lose power. The surge of electricity that had rushed towards the arena had created chaos at the cleanup headquarters. Feeling the electricity in the air, Dale realized that Xenia was there and had come to his aid. The opportunity that presented itself undoubtedly pleased the guy. With a jerk, he managed to push off the dragon's body, sending a clot of blue flame towards it. Dale was about to attack again when he noticed his friend lying nearby and immediately rushed towards her. Watching what was happening, Paul was delighted by the appearance of this dragon, which made his task easier. He was sure that in the current chaos, there would be no evidence left and no one would notice if he got rid of Dale on the sly. So, under the pretext of saving the children, he gave the order to use all available forces to distract the dragon until the cleanup team arrived. Dale felt relieved when the local staff took on the monster, but he couldn't relax. At that moment, his evolution level had reached the 3rd level, and it was becoming more difficult to maintain his human form. Acting on instinct alone, the hero turned around sharply and stopped the object flying at him. Pavel was shocked, but not at all because Dale was able to stop the goth attack. It was the boy's changed appearance that struck him. Even though he didn't know what a hero was, he had no intention of deviating from his original plan. He created several sharp golden rods and pointed them at the guy. But he again defended himself with his transformed hand, allowing the bars to penetrate it. Such inhuman abilities only further fueled Paul's desire to destroy him. But he didn't expect that Dale would be able to get rid of the bars with his blue flame. The next moment, the hero attacked him in response, raising a column of dust into the air. Pavel barely managed to escape unharmed from the crater of blue flame. Looking at the guy in front of him, he tried to understand what he was, but it was difficult to classify him as a human or a monster. He decided to wait for the Bureau to personally destroy the guy, mistaking him for a monster. Dale, however, was trying his best to contain the transformation that was bursting out. But the part of the dragon's power that he had absorbed was too unbridled and did not want to obey. When the guy started to rush from side to side, Pavel prudently created a shield from his black spikes on his hand. The man believed that his defense could handle everything, but it only took one blow to dispel this illusion. Only now did Pavel realize that he was simply not capable of resisting such a monster. In order to save his life, he attempted to escape, prudently informing the approaching cleanup team. But suddenly, Xenia blocked his path. The man tried to reason with the girl and open her eyes to the monster she was protecting. But Xenia was already well aware of everything and was completely on her friend's side. Her blow sent the man flying straight towards Dale. He delivered the decisive blow with his hand and absorbed Paul's powers. At that very moment, he was struck by a bad feeling. The cleanup team was already here. Turning to his friend, he shouted at her to quickly move away from him and pretend that they were strangers. Dale was afraid that he wouldn't be able to return to his normal appearance in time. But despite her fears, Xenia decided to stay by his side. She was firm in her decision, which was clearly visible in her eyes. The realization that she remained the same brought a slight smile to the guy's face. In an attempt to hold back the dragon, a group of repairmen put up a 3-star shield in front of themselves, hoping that it would help. But he didn't last even a couple of minutes before he was penetrated and the main one was mortally wounded. In the face of such a terrifying monster, the panic and horror of the employees only increased. Everyone was about to rush in to escape when a sharp pain in the heart made them fall to the floor, not allowing them to take a single step. It seemed that the end was about to come for them. But suddenly a rescue girl from the cleansing bureau burst inside. She was furious that she had to interrupt her date and come here. Therefore, the blows she inflicted were full of anger and the desire to kill. The workers thought that the monster wanted to kill them along with them, but as it turned out, its power had no effect on them. With the dragon temporarily paralyzed, Michelle stepped forward and told the others to run away and find her colleagues. Until then, she was going to fight alone. At the same time, Xenia stood up for her friend and shouted at him to hide in one of the rooms and come to his senses there. As Dale obediently ran inside, she set about her plan to buy him some time. Just at that moment, more people appeared in the arena, and the girl headed towards them, joyfully shouting for salvation. Dale, however, tried to control the 10-fold increased power of demonic genes. In the process, he realized that the structure of his hand bones had been altered. Therefore, the hero decided to change tactics and stabilize his genes, developing his bones to new strength. But he overdid it a little, and several black needles flew out of his hands, just like those of the dragon he was fighting. All this time, Xenia diligently distracted the attention of the rescue group. A sudden loud sound from the room behind her made her tense. The rescuers also became wary and decided to find out what kind of monster was lurking there. Xenia watched them intently, ready at any moment to stun the men and run away with Dale. But to her relief, the guy came out of the room in a normal state and asked what was going on. So, without arousing the men's suspicions, Dale approached his friend with a smile. But he didn't lose sight of the rescuers who were evacuating other survivors. The hero knew that the dragon that had appeared was not in its full form, and that something even worse awaited them in the future. Therefore, I firmly decided to become even stronger and obtain as many strong genes and necessary resources as possible. A few days later, our heroes were enrolled together in the Hero Academy. Xenia tried to figure out how Dale could fulfill the conditions set for him and become the strongest person in just 1 year. But the hero was confident in himself and had no doubt that he could achieve this. Xenia had no choice but to also believe in him. Turning to her, Dale reminded her that she too had a difficult path ahead of her to reach 3 stars in just a month. During this discussion, they were interrupted by a joyful shout from their new acquaintances. Tyler and 2 others swore allegiance to the hero until death in gratitude for him helping them and saving their lives. After greeting them, Dale introduced Xenia to them. All 3 immediately recognized the name of the outstanding genius and could not contain their shock. But a moment later, the shock gave way to Tyler's genuine admiration. His suggestion that our heroes were dating was immediately dismissed. And then they repeated the simple truth, which had already become boring to them, that they were just childhood friends. But 1 suitcase for 2 clearly did not confirm their words. Changing the subject, David approached our heroes with a proposal. He spoke about the upcoming competition for resources and suggested forming 1 team. But Tyler was vehemently against this idea, realizing that they would only drag Dale down. Xenia considered this trio to be an excellent bait, thanks to which they could save a lot of energy. Therefore, Dale, who shared her opinion, himself suggested that they form a team. Taking this decision for pity, Tyler immediately became indignant. By pressing him, Dale convinced the guy that this was not pity at all. The anger instantly evaporated and tears of gratitude for the chance appeared on Tyler's face. Without missing a beat, the hero made a condition that if all the reverses went to 1 person, he should keep them for himself. The first lesson began that same day, taught by William, who became their teacher for that year. He began with the bad news that if the students failed to awaken their power within a year, they would be expelled. Casting a gloomy glance at the audience, he listed the percentages of strength of the 3 students who had passed the test. When Tyler responded, William said he had to reach his potential this year if he didn't want to be relegated again. When Dale asked about the teacher's strange behavior, Tyler explained that the man calls students by their gene percentage instead of their names, those who have little strength. Meanwhile, the teacher mentioned that their class was special because another genius had appeared among them. All the students' admiring glances were directed at Ksenia. The teacher didn't forget to mention another special student with only 1% of his genes. The man didn't like the fact that such a student was in his class and asked him to stand up so that everyone could look at Dale. Everyone started looking around in surprise, trying to understand who this man was and how he even got here. Without a drop of embarrassment, the hero stood up and informed the teacher that he had already awakened his power, which was connected with metal. William didn't believe that 1% of genes could awaken the force and asked him to come out to him so that he could help conduct this lecture. On his way down, Dale asked the teacher for a set of resources in exchange for his help. Afterwards, William explained to the students the nature of awakened abilities and how to properly awaken and control them. To demonstrate everything clearly, he took out a metal bar. Having calculated the required amount for 1% of Dale's genes, the man broke off a small piece. Saying that the hero could only control so much metal, he threw him the piece. After this, the man turned away from the boy, preaching that only the number of genes determines all of a person's achievements. He cited as an example the current genius, Alexia, with 91% of the genes capable of breathing freely underwater. He again mentioned Ksenia and her immunity to high-voltage current. For those whose percentage was less than 20, William would put a cross on them right from the start, because they were not capable of awakening the power. Only Dale proved otherwise by causing the metal in his hand to disappear into his body and reappear. Perplexed, the man wrote it off as the boy somehow just being incredibly lucky. In order to undermine the hero's confidence, William decided to show him the entire difference between 1% of genes and 80. As a multitude of golden tentacles rushed towards Dale, he simply covered himself with his piece of metal. The man continued to press with his strength, continuing to talk about how just one strong person could cope with an entire army. But Dale didn't seem to feel this pressure. A confident smile remained on his face. At some point, he even remembered that in the past he had killed this teacher with his own hands in the guise of a monster. William saw that his actions had no effect against an ordinary student, and this irritated him quite a bit. Dale understood that the reason for this was that in addition to 1% of the heroic gene, he also had 99 demonic ones. Therefore, he could have easily overcome the teacher, but he did not intend to do so as not to attract unnecessary attention to himself. So, trying not to look too fake, the hero finally gave in to William. The man was perfectly aware of what had just happened and could not hide his surprise. Naturally, none of the students noticed this. Everyone simply admired the strength of their teacher. His own defeat in this battle replaced the man's earlier contempt for Dale with interest. Having thanked the guy for his help with the demonstration, he allowed him to return to his place. Then he turned to the class and announced that a competition for newcomers would now be held. Everyone had been waiting for it to start for a long time, but many had doubts about Dale and his small percentage of forces. One of those present had heard that the hero wanted to defeat everyone and was now extremely interested in how Dale would do it. So, making an exception, Eli invited our hero to his group. Usually, he would have recruited students with a high percentage of genes, but for Dale's sake, he made a concession and helped him implement his plan. In fact, Eli was targeting Ksenia, who follows her friend everywhere. The offer seemed very generous and tempting, but Dale refused without even hearing the whole thing. Having received a sharp refusal, Eli no longer hid his true attitude towards the guy and confessed the purpose for which he invited him. In response to all his threats, Dale only smiled broadly and wished Eli luck in his plans. When the enraged boy returned, William advised him not to provoke others ahead of time. He then moved on to the main task, the competition, and handed out resource coupons to the students, along with some instructions. The competition itself, for the fight for resources, took place in the forest near the academy, and only an hour was given for its completion. Tyler was eager to go and help Dale win resources. His sister had nothing against it, unlike David. He was too afraid for himself, which is why he accepted Eli's offer in exchange for a favor. Tyler perceived his actions as a personal betrayal, but he could no longer do anything, because Eli's guys began to slowly surround them. Instead of attacking Dale right away, the stronger guys chose to leave him for last. The hero kindly agreed to wait until their attacks on the week ended. At this time, Eli was already in full swing hunting for resources. He used his water element to its fullest extent without fear of causing harm, so he amused himself by dealing with every enemy he came across. His team members acted in exactly the same way. Having waited for the right moment, Armin went out to meet Eli, intending to seize the resources he had collected. Eli had no doubts about his powers and even assumed that he was superior to some rich heir of a famous family. Both guys immediately clashed. In response to the enemy's fire attack, Eli used water. However, contrary to his expectations, His attack turned out to be much weaker and was unable to extinguish the fire. Having finished with their main victims, Eli's guys switched back to Dale to take the last batch of resources. Ed hoped that our hero would be pretty scared and would decide to simply give up. But suddenly he noticed streams of electricity emanating from Xenia. Before the girl could do anything, he decided to get rid of her. Halfway through his attack, our hero intercepted him, asking how long it would take her to gain control of the power. Ed's former self-confidence diminished, and suspicions crept in that his opponent was far from an ordinary weakling. Watching the whole thing from the roof of the building, William concluded that the Academy's electricity bills would increase significantly. But he was glad that this was not his headache, but the finance department's. Still holding his opponent with one hand, Dale asked why she hadn't released her current yet. To prevent her attack, another daredevil rushed towards them. Without even being distracted from the conversation, the hero easily overpowered the second opponent. Realizing that Dale wasn't so simple, the remaining guys decided to all attack at once. Xenia asked for a couple more minutes to find the missing person. Thanks to the electrons sent through the air, she was able to easily determine the location of Eli, who was fighting with Armin. Now that she knew where everyone was, she was able to go on the offensive. Meanwhile, Eli continued his attempts to fight off the enemy's fiery attacks. But each time, Armin showed his superiority, demonstrating amazing control of his fire element. Eli couldn't last even a minute against him. Only after experiencing the repeated taste of defeat did the boy realize the difference in their strength. After letting Eli go, Armin praised his endurance and decided that from now on he and his guys would work for him. Eli took his proposal with caution, not understanding what benefit Armand would gain from it. He admitted that his powers had already reached 3 stars and he could graduate from the academy right now. His words left Eli even more confused. Armin's goal was to recruit young talents for his family, which is what he told the boy about when he invited him to join. Eli did not refuse his tempting offer. As soon as he extended his hand towards Armand, several bolts of lightning flew out of nowhere in their direction. In a matter of seconds, Eli's body was engulfed in powerful electric shocks. The same fate befell everyone else who was unlucky enough to be nearby. Unlike them, Armin was luckier. He intuitively set up a fire defense. Here, Dale emerged from the bushes with his friends, whom he instructed to collect coupons from immobilized opponents. Noticing Armand here, the hero was not very surprised, but he completely ignored Dale. It seemed that Ksenia's presence here greatly disappointed him. The girl immediately stopped his attempts to win her over to his side, giving a clear refusal. But Armand had no intention of convincing her, and simply decided to wait until she changed her mind of her own free will. Dale covered Xenia with himself, believing that she was not yet ready to fight such a strong opponent. So, wanting to test his own strength, he took the blow himself. Armand had already decided that everything was over, but the enemy, who suddenly appeared unharmed, caught him by surprise. He instantly created a fiery palm in front of him, intending to grab Dale, but he failed. Then he had to use more force. Having surrounded the hero from 2 sides, he left him no chance to escape. With one sharp movement, Armin clasped his palms together, trapping his opponent inside. Eli was worried that this would kill Dale, but Armin knew what he was doing and was confident that everything would be fine with the guy. Having lived up to his expectations, our hero quickly freed himself from the fiery captivity. This piqued Armand's interest even more, prompting him to resort to a more complex and sophisticated technique. Hundreds of fiery hands reached out from the ground towards Dale, intending to grab him. The guy was surprised by such a quantity, but their small size made his task much easier. So he cut one arm behind the arc with his metal blade. Watching his actions, Armand carefully noticed details and analyzed the enemy. To end this battle, he decided to take some risks. Grabbing Dale's blade with his flaming hand, he provoked a clash of abilities. With this move, Armin planned to directly attack the enemy's gene with his own and destroy it. After that, Dale would need about a year to recover, and this time would be enough for him to get Ksenia. However, his attack had no effect on our hero. It even seemed to Armin that the strength of Dale's genes was similar to the genes of his uncle, who possessed 4 stars, but for some reason the hero decided to give in to him. This action confused Armand and made him expect a catch, but Dale really just admitted defeat. After an hour, the teacher gathered everyone in one place and asked everyone to hand in the coupons they had collected to take to the resource department. Eli and his defeated boys just made gloomy faces, angry at everything and everyone. The first to approach the teacher was a happy Dale with a whole stack of coupons in his hands. The man accepted the coupons and, with a satisfied grin, warned that now the hero and his company would become the object of universal hatred. Then he turned his gaze to another outstanding student in his class and asked where his coupon was. As he searched his empty pockets, Armand asked himself the same question. With ill-concealed joy, Dale admitted that he had seen the coupon on the ground during the battle by accident and picked it up. When he handed Armand the coupon to return it, he could barely contain his anger. Having promised himself to get rid of this guy at any cost, Armand hastily left the forest, leaving behind the coupon, which he no longer needed. That same evening, Dale received his resources, and now on the way to the dorm, he shared what he had obtained with Tyler and his sister. All this time, Emma wanted to ask why Dale didn't defeat Armand, although he could, and finally decided to. The hero replied that at that moment, resources were more important to him than victory in that battle. After walking a few blocks, Tyler noticed his friend was going in the wrong direction and called out to him. Dale pointed to the building ahead and said that the academy had set aside special spots for high-achieving kids and that he was heading there. Emma realized that he would live with Ksenia before her brother. But as soon as he realized this fact, he no longer interfered and joyfully wished the couple goodnight. So our heroes continued their journey together, discussing that they would need the whole night to absorb all these resources. Once inside, Dale explained the method used to enhance a person with special genes. Under his clear direction, Ksenia emptied one of the vials of potion. After this, the hero suddenly approached, asking to attack him with electricity to check how much her strength had changed. But the girl was too surprised by her friend's closeness and did not hear what he asked her about. Recent events immediately began to surface in his memory, showing how much Dale had changed. The guy's repeated request forced Ksenia to emerge from these thoughts. Not waiting for any reaction from her, he pinched her cheeks, trying to reach his friend. She recoiled in surprise and unexpectedness. With one careless movement, Dale fell to the floor after her, covering her with himself. This ambiguous situation confused the girl. Her request to get up was ignored by the hero. Instead, he moved closer, which embarrassed Ksenia even more. Turning away, she repeated her request to stop this. At that moment, Dale barely audibly wheezed that he wanted to eat her and was barely holding back. Taking his words for a stupid joke, Ksenia turned an indignant gaze on him. But her friend had indeed turned half into a monster, and now his sharp fangs were ready to sink into her body. Seriously frightened, Ksenia reacted with lightning speed and attacked him with her current. The force of her blow was so strong that it extended beyond the room and nearly hit the house next to it. After this, Dale admitted, not without admiration, that the strength of her genes had increased, and it was indeed difficult for him to resist eating her. The girl only chuckled in displeasure at this. Having decided that this was enough for today, the hero decided to take a little walk and satisfy his hunger. Ksenia played it safe in advance and threw a mask over her friend's face. So, promising to be careful, Dale left their room. During all this time, he has already managed to reach the 3rd level of the monster. As his level increased, he acquired new attacking techniques that he wanted to test out. As soon as he created a blue flame in his palm, he sensed danger and immediately extinguished it. It seemed that everything was calm around and there was no one nearby. But danger lurked deep underground. The dragon from the arena was still looking for Dale and now felt how he used his power. So, due to the threat of being quickly discovered, the hero decided to refrain from using his flame. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Thomas was returning home from work when he was suddenly attacked. He didn't even have time to realize what had happened before he was dragged into a car. The man woke up already tied up inside a truck that contained several other victims. Pressing on the illegality of what was happening, Thomas demanded that he be released immediately. The kidnappers didn't even react to his cries, thinking about the amount of money they would get for selling these people. It was during one of these moments that Dale attacked the car. Having struck, he immediately disappeared from the criminal's sight. Both men were seriously scared. Just as one of them managed to get the engine started again, Dale reappeared. He broke through the glass with his hand, grabbed the driver and abruptly pulled him out of the car. But his hero didn't intend to kill him so quickly, so he simply threw the criminal into a tree. He quickly recovered from the blow and stood up, asking Dale who he was. Meanwhile, Mark decided to deal with Thomas before he woke up all the other victims and they turned into monsters. When the man saw the strange potion in the kidnapper's hands, he began to beg for mercy and asked to be allowed to go home to his son. But this only made things worse when he was told that they would also soon come for his son, who had the monster gene. Our hero then entered into battle with the driver, who turned out to be awakened with 3 stars. The criminal felt his superiority for a short time, only until the moment when Dale summoned the blue flame. A moment of confusion was enough for the hero to deliver a more powerful blow. The fraction of flame he released left severe burns on the man's hands, rendering him unable to use his power any further. Realizing his defeat, he began to insist that he was getting rid of people with the monster gene for the greater good. But Dale had a different opinion and saw nothing in common between what was happening and good deeds. With a little pressure, he was able to convince himself of the Lance family's involvement in all of this. He had long been suspicious of the Church of Atonement, because they were the ones who provided special assistance to those carrying the monster gene. In reality, they secretly passed information about the carriers to the Lance family, and they bought these people for their own personal purposes. He also managed to find out through threats that this family had numerous bases and farms for breeding monsters throughout the country. In order to avoid death, the man even promised to take Dale to one of the bases located in their city. Our hero didn't know the location of the bases, so he agreed to this condition. But this turned out to be a trick on the part of the criminal. Dale expected something like this, so he was able to easily stop the man. Then he decided not to waste time and just gobble it up. All this time, Mark continued his attempts to force Thomas to drink the potion. But Dale's approaching steps forced him to push the showdown with Thomas to the back burner. Dropping everything, Mark quickly ran out of the car, saving his life. Looking out the window, Thomas thanked the hero for saving him. But in fact, everyone in that car was already dead, which he told the man and advised him to get as far away from there as possible. He disappeared immediately after that, leaving Thomas at a crossroads, as he had a small son left in the city. He followed Mark like an unnoticeable shadow. As Dale expected, it led him straight to the monster factory. Inside, there were many monsters guarding the entrance to the laboratory hidden in the depths. Mark's approach was immediately captured by the camera. He managed to confirm his identity, but the absence of his partner and the goods aroused the security guard's suspicions. Mark had to tell about the skirmish with Dale and the death of his partner. He was only allowed inside when the man assured the guards that he was not being followed. The moment Mark entered, one of the guards noticed a shadow slipping behind him, but his partner paid no attention to it. Thanks to the high level of monster genes, Dale managed to remain undetected by other monsters and sneak inside. In addition, he found many blind spots in this room, which he intended to take advantage of. Inside the laboratory, the experimental subject was prepared for his future fate by removing excess organs. The unfortunate man resigned himself to his fate and desperately asked for mercy for his wife, who had too small a percentage of monster genes. Instead of answering, Lincoln looked away. Following him, the man noticed a whole shelf with compartments for storing someone's severed heads. Among them, he found his wife. After what he saw, the man's mind was filled with rage, displacing all fear. Lincoln had barely begun the operation, ignoring the curses that rained down on him, when suddenly the power went out. The entire laboratory was without power, causing a wave of panic to wash over the researchers. Right there, Mark burst in and accused the lead investigator of leaking information about the abductions. Lincoln quickly put all the facts together and accused Mark of bringing a tail behind him, which is why everything was now turned off. After this, he declared the first level of alert for everyone. The man also intended to report the break-in to his superiors, but he was not allowed to do this. A sudden attack destroyed the phone right in his palm. Following this, Dale himself appeared, disappointed that today's dinner promised to be less tasty. William was deeply disappointed with the security system of this base, since an outsider was able to penetrate it. The guards who appeared from behind Dale attacked him with activated flame techniques. Mark also joined them, wanting to avenge his partner. William stood aside, wondering who this boy was and who could have sent him here. But he was completely confident in the strength of his people, each of whom possessed the third level and the elements of wind and fire. All three attacked simultaneously, and a whole whirlwind of elements, each reinforcing the other's power, rushed towards our hero. In this battle, they miscalculated the strength of their enemy, which led to their defeat. Dale also released his blue flames, which absorbed the whirlwind aimed at him. Both guards barely escaped burns, wondering what kind of super destructive technology this was. But they interested Dale to a lesser extent than they did Mark. With one blow, he smashed the man's head under the shocked looks of two guards. Despite this scene, the two still had hope that they could defeat Dale if they kept their distance from him. Therefore, jumping back, they again released powerful streams of flame. All this time, William remained motionless, watching what was happening. Unlike his subordinates, he was smart enough to realize that this guy couldn't be killed so easily. For many years, he studied the nature of fire, and during this time, he managed to thoroughly study it. For this reason, he practically saw Dale controlling the element of fire itself with his physical strength. In order to resist him, the guards had to take a desperate step and use their trump card, the flame source pill. William was not happy with this arrangement. This drug increased a person's power to 4 stars at once, which would be enough to defeat an ordinary attacker. But the man feared that Dale's flame was like an eternal flame emanating from the earth, which could not be resisted. Confirming his fears, the hero easily shrugged off the enemy's attack, destroying the guard with just one blow. In this way, he got rid of 2 main obstacles. When he had finished with them and went to William, he shared with him his guesses regarding the nature of the blue flame. Dale had not known about this before, so he demanded that the man take him to the place where this flame originated. William agreed, but only on the condition that the boy join his research group and work for the Lance family. Surprised by his compliance, the hero reminded him that he had just killed 2 of his men. The researcher did not consider the death of the 2 guards a problem, and he told the boy this, saying that he had nothing to worry about. Here Dale also noted that other scientists will not live either. He admitted that he had previously released all the monsters and that it was only a matter of time before the door here was sealed. His words plunged the man into complete horror and bewilderment at the fact that a person with heroic genes was playing against his own. Covering the eyes of the man who died on the table, Dale admitted that this was his revenge for his brothers. To prevent further questioning, he grabbed William by the throat and demanded to tell him about the eternal flame. But even the monsters raging nearby did not make the man more accommodating. He reluctantly gave up the location, not without lying. However, Dale immediately saw through his lie, comparing facts from his past and phrases accidentally dropped by William in the dialogue. Therefore, having uncovered his lie and planned to wait for reinforcements, he delighted the man with the news that reinforcements were also awaiting him. With each passing moment, an expression of despair began to creep across the researcher's face. Having failed to obtain any more information from him, the hero destroyed the man without a trace. He had to hurry a little because he could smell the strong scent of heroic genes coming from above. He understood that the factory was now overrun with monsters and there were few exits here, which is why he could not avoid meeting the heroes. But Dale wasn't going to just sit around waiting for them and decided to gather resources that would be useful for himself. After this, he decided to take up the original purpose of his journey, to feed on monsters. Sometime later, the hero left the base with the collected resources. Right there on the way out, Dale ran into one of the heroes, who had already been waiting for his appearance. The man's golden whirlwind immediately enveloped the hero's body and exerted significant pressure on the ground, causing it to crack. Dale recognized the rising news star with the awakened 4 stars of the earth element immediately. He was also known for his excessive cruelty, which he showed towards our hero. Gathering a multitude of stones together above his opponent's head, he brought them down sharply, straight at Dale. But the blue flame was able to easily cope with this, breaking the stone. Rick was impressed by his opponent's strength, but he had no intention of giving in to him so quickly. So the next moment he used a more powerful technique, planning to make Dale beg for death. Although the hero remained unharmed for now, he understood that he would not be able to defeat a more powerful opponent. So he decided to act cunningly and lure Rick into a trap. Due to his impulsiveness, the hero easily succumbed to provocation and struck his own stone. Thanks to this, Dale managed to get out and find himself behind the enemy. Rick immediately defended himself with a stone shield from a blow from behind. But our hero had something else in mind. Unbeknownst to Rick, he placed the mutated tentacle on his back. Feeling a slight tickle, the hero laughed at Dale, throwing him back. Suddenly, a strong tremor shook the ground beneath his feet. It even seemed to Rick that something was trying to break out from under the ground. Dale knew his opponent was close to the truth. He had previously left his scent on Rick and hoped that the dragon would focus on the hero. He quickly put up an earthen barrier in front of him. But this was not enough to contain the dragon. Our hero's trick had been successful, so now the dragon was focused specifically on Rick. When the boy tried to run, the monster rushed after him, instilling horror and bewilderment in its prey. Dale, having escaped this terrible fate, merely waved goodbye to Rick and wished him luck. He himself decided to take the resources and go home, leaving everything else to the guys from the cleanup bureau. They had been on the base's territory for some time, thinking over a plan of action against the dragon. Immediately at Michelle's command, everyone rushed forward, taking their positions. Jeffrey took on the further task of coordinating his partners. So they began a continuous series of attacks, but the dragon's body was too flexible and practically did not touch it. At some point, Jeff noticed another person fighting a dragon. Thanks to his sound waves, he was able to recognize Rick. As soon as Michelle learned of the presence of a murderer sentenced to death here, she decided to get rid of both him and the dragon. Her water blades could cut through anything in their path and were now heading towards the distracted dragon. Rick noticed this attack earlier and even thought that someone had come to his aid. But as soon as he saw Michelle, he realized that no one was going to save him. So he activated the highest level skill in his arsenal and completely merged with the ground. The dragon was less fortunate. A swift attack of water blades completely cut its body into many pieces. Rick's cover was also destroyed and he was thrown aside. Having prioritized the destruction of the monster, Michelle ignored the guy. Rick decided not to linger and leave this place as quickly as possible. But before he could run even a couple of meters, the mouth of another monster opened under his feet. Having swallowed Rick, the second Earth Dragon burst out. Michelle didn't understand at all the reason for such activity of these monsters. But she had little time to think. She had to do something urgently. Telling the others to stay back, she charged at the enemy. The signalman tried to reason with her that jumping straight into the mouth of this monster was sheer madness. But Michelle was confident in her powers and rushed into the mouth, destroying the dragon from the inside with her element. The head of the Lance family listened to the report on the work of the Flame of Life research base. When he was urgently informed about the situation at the monster factory and that all the scientists there had been eaten by a dragon, the man was very unhappy with the news that the Bureau had become interested in their activities. But there was also good news. They finally managed to learn about the blue flame, which was capable of consuming everything in its path. Douglas believed that such a flame, combined with their own, would be the key to unlocking the eternal flame. Armand shared his uncle's opinion, believing that he could become the one who would discover the flower of the eternal flame and gain unprecedented power. The plan in Douglas's head matured quickly enough, and all that remained was to find the owner of the blue flame and extract his gene. Therefore, he gave the order to inform the Bureau that their laboratory had been destroyed and all materials had been stolen by the wielder of the blue flame. But no one even guessed that the flower was connected to a monster living deep underground in the center. It was a real earth dragon, and only its many tails were visible. It was his trap that Rick fell into. Using blue flame, the dragon burned the boy alive along with his own tail and devoured him. Dale returned safely back to the dorm, hoping that the dragon had already been dealt with. He understood that they could easily detect him by his aura and send mercenaries, so he decided that for now he should lay low. Meanwhile, the flame flower in the laboratory began to slowly bloom, attracting the attention of scientists. In their joy, they wanted to call Douglas, who had just left, but they didn't have time. Their bodies were cut apart by a force wave in an instant. At the same base, there was also a cleanup team consisting of the strongest fighters of the Lance family. All of them were also destroyed by the merciless blue flame. Only one of them was lucky enough to survive and witness such a horrific scene. When Douglas responded to the noise and returned, he stuttered as he recounted everything that had happened. Considering this flower to be a monster, the boy advised reporting it to the Bureau and getting rid of the threat. But Douglas had a different opinion on the matter, and in order to prevent information leakage, he got rid of the boy. Armand was not afraid to get close to the flower and could now interact with it with his flame. Douglas had suspected the flower's essence before, but now he was only convinced of it and had no intention of giving this treasure to anyone. Dale was trying to solve a different problem. He is on the verge of reaching 3 stars, but before that, he needs to develop his abilities to that level. By stabilizing the monster's genes with the help of the heroes, he will be able to control the shape of his body. But now he didn't have enough heroic genes to level up, and he needed a little help from Ksenia. She easily gave her consent. After this, the hero transformed his hand, intending to conduct a small experiment. A small tentacle dug into her neck, causing the girl to close her eyes in pain. A small amount of monster genes spread throughout her body. This triggered the full activation of Ksenia's heroic genes, increasing her power. Dale explained the entire process to his friend, removing unnecessary worries. He wasn't at all worried about power outages, knowing full well that the academy would pay all the bills. At the same time, the secretary burst into the director's office, reporting that all the electrical equipment was out of order. But the man was not concerned about this issue. He guessed that their brilliant student was just training now and even admired her talent. The secretary did not share his enthusiasm and pointed out that their electricity bills would skyrocket. But this question also did not bother Roger, who considered that his student's talent was 100 times more valuable. In the middle of this conversation, a call came from the telephone line intended for communication with the Cleansing Bureau. Roger could no longer contain his surprise when he received the message that the entire city had lost power and a demand for compensation. After this conversation, he asked to call Ksenia to him. Dale came with her and apologized for the inconvenience. When the director asked the girl if she had managed to achieve 1 star, she admitted that she had not. Roger found it difficult to hide his disappointment, and even offered to teach her how to control her electricity. Ksenia's sudden admission that she had achieved 2 stars stunned the man. He found it hard to believe that she had managed to break through to such a level so quickly. That's why I decided to see for myself. Using his power, he created several branches that instantly surrounded Ksenia. This is how Roger was able to figure out that she had somehow managed to activate her genes, which is usually only possible in 2 cases. The man had some suspicions about this, but he did not ask questions. Dale broke the tense atmosphere by saying that they were currently training hard, wanting to reach 3 stars. Shaking his head, Roger said that Ksenia would be able to do this thanks to the special training at the academy. But our hero would not. He explained that the 3 stars allow one to use heroic genes to build a star map, similar to Armand's hand. Our hero's genes are defective, and there are too few of them to form a star map. But Dale knew that the Academy had special technology that could help him with this. The director became wary when the hero mentioned this, because news of this had long been erased from all sources. He explained that he could not use that technology because it was still too crude and had many nuances. Dale was confident in his abilities and tried to convince the man that he was the ideal candidate for the experiment. But Roger could not give his consent for the reason that the price of the technology did not exceed the amount billed for electricity. Having failed to obtain his consent, Dale decided to go back, simultaneously offering Xenia another training session. It was an obvious provocation, but the prospect of receiving exorbitant bills on a regular basis did not appeal to the man. He decided to give our hero a chance and made it a condition that Dale's team win the qualifying competition, which made him happy. He also reminded that there are only 3 days left until the deadline for accepting applications for participation. Olga was sure that these two would not be able to defeat the strongest students of the Academy and take first place, but the director of the Academy thought differently. Roger examined Dale's school tests and found something abnormal that aroused the man's suspicion and interest. Olga knew that the director was studying monster genes and was now confused to learn that he was also studying hero genes. Before she had any more questions, Roger decided to end the conversation and deal with the electricity bills. The very next morning, 2 representatives of the Bureau, Kyle and Justin, came to see him. They came here not only as judges for the upcoming competition, but to search for the blue flame among the students. Roger was surprised that the Bureau thought such a person could be hiding here. Kyle told him about his run-in with Blue Flame at the mall when it was attacked by monsters. Since it was dark there, he was unable to make out the face, but he was sure that it was a teenager who had recently awakened the power within himself. Justin added that yesterday the Lance family announced that Blue Flame had attacked their lab and killed everyone there, stealing materials. The man conducted his own analysis and shared Kyle's opinion that the perpetrator could be one of the students. Their words did not at all convince the director of the Academy of his students' involvement in what was happening. Kyle then admitted that since the day of the battle at the mall, he has felt a special connection with the Blue Flame. Therefore, as soon as he crossed the threshold of the Academy, he felt how this connection became stronger. In a tone that brooked no argument, Justin announced that all new students would be thoroughly screened. That same morning, the first training session began in our heroes class. William enlightened the students about special equipment for pumping all 5 natural elements. But first, he decided to have a couple of fights to awaken the dormant genes within them. After giving everyone the task of finding a sparring partner, the man stepped back and called Dale and Ksenia. As soon as the hero walked away, Tyler and his sister were bombarded with attacks from other students. William was not happy that the director had given in to the children, and now he had been dragged into the matter by being made the group's curator. He was sure that Dale and his team would not even pass the minimum requirements to register for the competition. So he advised our hero to join the senior team, but Dale immediately rejected the idea. William tried to convey to him again that with 2 losers on the team and only 1% of their genes, they would not win. But the guy no longer heard him, distracted by a strange feeling inside. Thanks to the connection, he was able to sense the approach of one of the Bureau's heroes, whose genes he absorbed. Dale quickly realized that this connection worked both ways and tried to bury his 1% of genes under the genes of monsters. That's why he completely missed the teacher's words about the possibility of using a gene-enhancing card in the competition. But even with it, William didn't believe in Dale's abilities and thought that the card would save him if the boy could copy the enemy's ability. Instead of Dale, he suggested making Xenia the team captain and, as a test, asked her to attack him with all her strength. She was only glad to test her strength and asked to give her a couple of minutes. Seized by a strange premonition, the man made the adjustment that the first blow would be in the air. At the same time, a fight was already breaking out nearby between Tyler and other students. But a sudden flash of light stunned everyone, causing them to look up from their work. And the next moment, lightning struck there with an incredibly powerful discharge. Seriously frightened by Ksenia's anger, the bullies apologized to Thomas and even began to treat him with respect. William was no less shocked. Now he was even afraid to give her the captain's power-up card. At that moment, his thoughts were interrupted by the voice of the secretary approaching them. When the man walked away, Ksenia noticed the hero's tension. A little later, William introduced 2 guests of their cleanup agency to his students. Kyle was sure that their criminal was among these children, but for some reason unknown to him, their connection with the hero was abruptly cut off. Having no other choice, he decided to take drastic measures and simply smoke out the blue flame. Justin knew Kyle could easily get carried away and cause havoc, so he set penalties for major destruction in advance. But his partner will stop at nothing until he achieves his goal, so he created many metal swords in the air. Dale quickly realized that Kyle wanted to channel his powers through everyone here, but he didn't feel a bit of excitement. There was no way he could completely hide his heroic genes, which our hero was also well aware of. He also realized that even if he was caught, it would be very difficult to prove his identity as the Blue Flame. In those split seconds, Kyle found the one he had come all this way for. At that moment, all the Iron Blades rushed towards Dale, and he decided to use his brilliant acting skills. Attacking the guy, the hero dumped all the accusations he had on him. By showing his fear, the hero tried to convince Kyle that he had nothing to do with all this. But suddenly he stopped playing the coward and was able to clearly see the direction and structure of the enemy attack. The clarity Dale had in seeing all of this allowed him to use it to counterattack. Using a little metal, he managed to reproduce a sword exactly like Kyle's. William was undoubtedly amazed that Dale was able to learn this move in a matter of seconds, even without his star map. This trick made Justin believe that Dale was not the Blue Flame, but not Kayla. He was confident in his guess, and even the guy's use of another element did not make him stop. A few moments later, before everyone's eyes, Kyle's metal, accelerated to high speed, created powerful streams of flame. Seeing the metal generate fire, William allowed the thought that Dale might indeed be the criminal. To protect himself from all the fiery blades flying at him, the hero really only had to use his flame. But suddenly everything disappeared among the eddies of water. Michelle intervened and reminded Kyle of the Academy's rules and the subsequent punishment for violators. But Kyle was not intimidated by her threat and demanded that she get out of his way. When Michelle created the water dragon, he took stock of his own strength and retreated. Justin wasn't surprised by how quickly his partner gave in. Although Kyle backed down this time, he promised to return with a more serious investigation. In response to this statement, Michelle asked why Kyle had not realized earlier that Dale was the Blue Flame. After which, she reported that on the night of the attack on the laboratory, she was on patrol and saw that no one left the academy. This lie of the girl greatly shocked the hero. To avoid further escalation of the situation, Justin decided to take his partner away. As soon as they left, Dale noted that the academy's territory was quite large and it was difficult to keep track of everything. She replied that in reality, no one had time to do this, and she covered for him because she understands people well and is sure that he is not a villain. Soon after, Michelle left them, wishing them luck in their studies. In the evening, Tyler and Emma came to our hero's room as he had asked earlier. Once inside, Dale advised them to prepare themselves well for the hellish training that lay ahead. But before that, he asked them to completely trust him with their lives. His comrades were ready to do this without a drop of doubt. But Anna was tormented by one question that tormented her. Was Dale really a Blue Flame? When the hero confessed everything, Tyler could not contain his delight at this shocking news. Amazed by his sister's intelligence, he asked how she had figured it all out. She was sure that the Cleansing Bureau had come to them for a reason. She also noticed Dale's feigned reaction to the attack. Our hero also confessed that he was the villain who destroyed the Lance family laboratory. The girl was not surprised by this news and even guessed that they were doing evil in their laboratories. Therefore, he and his brother were ready to do everything possible to help Dale in the confrontation with the Lance family. Soon after, they were both given a bottle of the elixir. Tyler drained it in just a few seconds. When Anna completed her task, Dale explained that it was the essence of life that he stole from the Lances. Unlike her brother, Anna began to wonder why the hero had demanded that they trust him with their lives. This made her somewhat suspicious. But the next moment, Dale knocked her out with a sharp movement. Tyler was disabled in the same way. Our hero couldn't trust them with his secret about the monster's genes. Therefore, I began to stimulate the special genes of my friends, protecting myself. Since their gene count was small, he decided to act more aggressively to awaken them. Very soon, Anna woke up in her nightmare. Suddenly, the stuffed toy lying nearby began to change rapidly. And the next moment, a terrifying monster was already in front of her. Just at that moment, Kyle was patrolling nearby and felt a strange sense of threat coming from our hero's room. His partner wanted to make fun of him, but Kyle told him about his premonition. But suddenly they received a notification from the Bureau about an attack on the supply warehouse. Mikhail quickly reached the scene and reported that the building was destroyed and no survivors were found. Soon the rest of the groups came running here to provide support. Since there was no monster anywhere around, Mikhail had to use his exceptional hearing. He and the others barely had time to understand anything before they were overtaken by the blue flames of the Earth Dragon. Meanwhile, in order to give his friends more stimulation, Dale half-transformed into a monster. Watching this picture, Xenia was very worried about the safety of these two. Soon, Dale let them go and became human again. After which I noticed that Tyler, unlike Anna, was far from normal. At that moment, the guy suddenly jumped up, furiously swearing to kill his invisible enemy. The boys didn't come to their senses right away. But when it happened, Dale congratulated them on their successful awakening. Overjoyed, Tyler fell to his knees and began tearfully thanking our hero. With the training over, Dale gave them the task of achieving 2 stars before the competition began. The guys supporting Armand received a special serum to increase their strength and were now openly laughing at our hero's team. David, although he joined their gang, did not accept Dale and Tyler, who had not yet woken up to the fact that they were weaklings. He also advised visiting the Academy's network and reading news about the qualifying round of the competition. By this point, the live broadcast had already begun, and the presenter was about to move on to introducing the top 3 teams. The first one she named was the Crimson Flame team, led by none other than Armin. The next team to be announced was a team of warrior girls. And lastly, there was the Shield and Sword team, which included no less strong participants. Having announced all the teams, Beatrice declared the start of the first qualifying round. Without looking up from the broadcast, Ed remembered hearing about the most arrogant team among the participants and asked David who they were. He replied that it was a freshman team with only 4 members on the team. This news shocked the guys quite a bit and caused a lot of confusion. Meanwhile, our heroes ran into their first trouble in the form of a crowd of participants wanting revenge on Tyler. Dale even praised his friend for being able to incite even more hatred in someone than he did. Then he stepped forward and looked around the assembled crowd with a bored look. Earlier, one of the opponents suggested a one-on-one battle, but the hero found this idea too primitive. That's why he challenged everyone to a fight at once. His arrogant behavior only increased the anger and irritation of his revenge-seeking opponents. Since no one dared to go first, Tyler took on this role, wanting to test how much stronger the old enemies had become. With a couple of quick and precise movements, he managed to knock out one of the guys. Having shown that he had not become weaker during this time, he called on the others to gather together and use all their abilities against him. At the same time, the class leaders of the groups were placing bets, and the majority bet on Dale's team losing. But what had just happened in the forest made them doubt the correctness of their choice. William pointed out to the teachers that their fixation on superpowers was causing them to ignore other facts. Afterwards, he explained that although Tyler's genes are at a low level, in the eyes of martial arts masters, this guy is a true genius. That's why all the current second-year students had studied with him in the past, and the guy himself was very popular. But before his expulsion, he decided to teach his students one last lesson. Smith didn't believe that mere physical strength could match the power of heroic genes, and so he didn't believe that this team would win. In response to his words, William suggested raising the stakes. Smith considered the current generation of students to be ordinary hothouse flowers, so he accepted the increase in fees. Lying on the ground, Harry admitted that they had come here to greet Tyler and get to know Dale better. The words that he was just an egoist, brazenly using Tyler, did not hurt the hero at all. But each of those gathered was eager to defeat him and return Tyler back to the role of their teacher. Harry didn't even have time to receive a warning about this suicidal plan before he was attacked. A member of the other team knocked out his opponent with one punch. Having gotten rid of one captain, Herman immediately set his sights on the next. So, one after another, the teams were eliminated from the list of participants. Dale Herman decided to leave it for last. But when the 4th-year student approached our hero, he only took a small step back, dodging. Immediately after this, an iron spike appeared from the ground and flew straight at Herman. He was unable to dodge this unexpected high-speed attack. So, from his first fight, Dale emerged victorious. What happened left Beatrice with genuine admiration. The hero admitted that he was there only as an observer and told the participants hiding in the trees to come down. Another 4th-year immediately jumped off, thinking that Dale was too cocky for a first year. 2 more of his partners ran out right there. The hero pretended not to notice their appearance. When one of the attackers almost caught up with him, Tyler intervened and repeated that Dale was only an observer and that he would fight Anna. Devin didn't consider Tyler a rival, so he suddenly used the water dragon technique, hoping to get rid of the guy. But his opponent managed to respond to this attack with the same technique. This made Devin interested and even more eager to show the difference between the two of them. When Tyler attacked with his dragon again, he was in for another surprise. Now, instead of a weakling, Devin saw before him a madman who decided to replace the water element with his own blood. Anna, however, had her own battle going on. She managed to reach the rank of 3 stars and now also used her own star card. Unfortunately, her opponent had similar and more powerful wood control powers. Anna had difficulty dodging her attacks. At this time, the girl, busy with the chase, noticed too late the blossoming buds on the stems that enveloped her. As the flowers attacked her, she realized with horror that Anna had nourished them with her blood. Zack and his teammate decided to attack Dale, but he easily repelled their attacks without even turning around. When our hero asked Xenia to activate her star map, his opponent visibly tensed up. Zack was scared by the words about activation because not all cards can be activated. Only one living person has managed to do this. The guy knew about Xenia's high percentage of genes, but he didn't think that she was able to reach such a high level so quickly. As soon as the activation was launched, a powerful electric field burst out of the girl's body. Zack and everyone else were shocked by what happened. His teammate Kate quickly recovered and attacked, deciding that the freshman could not be stronger than her. Xenia didn't even have to do anything. The electric sphere around her got rid of every flying ice spike. Kate did not give up on her attempts and tried to use a different technique. The giant ice needle, her strongest technique, was also easily destroyed. This forced the girl to admit her own defeat. Xenia herself was at a loss because she was suspended in zero gravity and turned to Dale for help. But she didn't take into account that with one careless movement she could kill her friend. He immediately distanced himself, advising her to quickly deal with her new powers, and at the same time with her two opponents. Zack had already realized that he couldn't handle Xenia and decided to immediately attack the team captain. So joining forces, they rushed towards Dale. He hastened to warn them that this choice would eliminate them from the competition even faster. But they ignored his words, not attaching any importance to them. Zack was about to use the finishing move when suddenly his opponent's hand emerged from the whirlwind. And the next moment, he threw Zack back with one blow, destroying the whirlwind around him. Rolling on the ground, he couldn't understand how an ordinary first-year student could have such strength. Smith, who was watching the fight, also guessed that such strength could not belong only to the newcomer. When he demanded a thorough investigation into Dale's identity, William could no longer remain silent. He reminded them that the principal had already learned everything he needed to know about Dale and that they, the teachers, should not go behind his back. The brewing argument was interrupted by a message about the appearance of monsters in the city, which came to each of the teachers. The director of the academy also received this message, and now he had to decide whether to stop the competition. Since the situation was generally under control, he believed that they could complete the competition as usual. A large number of bureau employees had already gathered at the scene when Ethan ran in. He was informed that Michelle had driven 3 invisible monsters into the tunnel, but then another crowd of monsters burst in. Without thinking, Ethan immediately rushed inside, listening carefully to the sounds. When he met Michelle, she was fighting one of the invisible monsters, and the rest had disappeared somewhere. This fact left Ethan confused. Without stopping the battle, the girl asked him to find the escaped monsters and not let them get close. He immediately activated his star map and began to listen to all the sounds in the area. Its ability extended over tens of kilometers. He managed to spot a crowd of mutated animals that had become monsters moving toward the tunnel. But no matter how hard Ethan tried, he was unable to detect the invisible monsters. The fight between Tyler and Devin was still going on. Despite the fact that the first one had already received quite a few enemy attacks and lost a lot of blood, he still stood on his feet, not thinking of giving up. Zack tried hard to dodge Ksenia's electric lightning. Over the past half hour, she managed to figure out how her electromagnetic field works. By using acceleration, she was able to move through space at incredible speeds. The demonstration of her abilities increasingly instilled fear in her opponents. But just as she was about to launch another attack, her field disappeared due to the large expenditure of energy. To Zeke, this seemed like the perfect opportunity to end it all. But Dale got ahead of him, intervening and knocking the guy out with one blow to the neck. Having announced the hero's victory in this fight, Beatrice also announced the end of the first stage of the competition. Here she also announced that in the second stage, only one of the 6 teams would become the winner. The essence of the new task was to find a reward for the winner hidden in the forest. Xenia suggested making every effort and taking first place, but she was worried that she had used up all her energy and that it would take her time to process the electricity from the nearest city. Dale reassured her, saying that they had already done their part of the job and now he would take care of the rest himself. Arman also planned to act separately from his group. The day before, his uncle told him about his plan to use this competition to conquer the academy. Arman knew about his uncle's plans and thought that it would take much longer. Douglas explained that thanks to the blossoming flower, people here develop their powers many times faster. Thus, in just 1 month, he will be able to acquire 100 new fighters with 4 stars. And his brother, Arman's father, will acquire the Eternal Flame and become the first 5-star superhuman in the country. Thanks to his uncle's efforts, Arman already knew where the reward was, but he couldn't let anyone else know it. The reason was simple. There were hidden cameras everywhere. So I decided to pretend to look for clues. It was during this activity that he encountered our hero, but he didn't notice him at all and rushed straight to the location of the reward. Arman couldn't let Dale thwart his plans again. The reward was guarded by 2 guards, one of whom was a subordinate of the Lance family and was the strongest person in this forest. Therefore, Armin was full of confidence that Dale would never be able to get his reward. Thanks to memories from his first life and the monster's excellent sense of smell, he quickly managed to find 2 prize guards. Because of their connection, Kyle sensed him approaching and was ready to attack when Dale opened the hatch. Wearily repeating that he was not a blue flame, the hero dodged the metal arrows. But Kyle immediately turned his arrows around and pointed them at the guy again. And the next moment, a loud roar was heard through the forest. The hero, not at all injured, slipped past the bureau member, thanking him for letting him in so easily. Kyle became convinced that Dale was also able to sense his presence and anticipate his actions. Now there is only one enemy left on our hero's path to the reward. He immediately launched his mental attack, but to his surprise, it had no effect on Dale. To prevent his victory, the man decided on a more dangerous technique, undermining the mind. But here too, failure awaited him. Dale's consciousness was many times stronger. When the hero instinctively responded to this attack with the same coin, the man could not stand it. Without paying any further attention to him, he took his reward. As soon as he took her in his hands, he felt the approaching danger. Thanks to his knowledge of the future, he was sure that it was an invisible monster. Ethan continued his attempts to find out the location of the monsters. When he realized that the monsters had dug their way to the academy through a tunnel, the boy was horrified, realizing what a mistake they had made. Now the academy where the competition was held is left with virtually no teacher protection. He immediately informed Michelle that it was a trap and that the students were now in danger. But the others didn't believe him, deciding that Ethan was just looking for an excuse to escape the battlefield. By this point, Beatrice had already announced the winner of this year's competition. Soon after, she noticed one of the watchtowers engulfed in blue flames. The girl immediately became wary, remembering the message about the attack of an invisible monster. When an invisible enemy destroyed several students, Beatrice had no doubts left. She urgently announced the end of the competition and asked all students to return to the academy. She also reported the situation to the director of the academy and coordinated the actions of the liquidation bureau members. Alexa, Roger's secretary, was against the idea of blocking the forest to prevent the threat of an attack on the academy itself. But Roger believed that this was the only possible way out, even if the liquidators inside died. Having made his decision, he disappeared from his office without listening to further objections. Once outside, he urged the teachers and bureau members to do everything they could to destroy the monsters and protect the students. Roger then immediately created a barrier of trees blocking off the forest. All the remaining students inside were carried out to the walls by the stems. It was no longer possible to go back into the forest. Students standing nearby loudly discussed how the liquidators should have stopped the monsters back in the mountains. From all the information he heard, it became clear to Dale that the alarm was a hoax and he needed to get inside the forest. Some of the students were unhappy that they were thrown out here so rudely in the midst of the battle. Therefore, with their combined efforts, they managed to create a passage through the barrier created by the director. There were more and more people wanting to come inside and show that they were worth something. Only Dale and his team remained on the sidelines. He planned to follow them later, once he had broken through to 3 stars with the help of his prize, the evolving device. Therefore, having asked to do without unnecessary questions, he told his friends to return to the walls of the academy. Armin was also in no hurry to return to the forest, busy talking with his subordinate. He was extremely unhappy that Isaac had allowed Dale to take the reward. He was also interested in why the other liquidator did nothing and called Dale a blue flame. Meanwhile, the hero asked his friends to guard his room from the outside and not let anyone in. Dale was confident that his plan would work and that this bracelet would help compensate for the low percentage of heroic genes in his body. For this task, he prudently stocked up on life essence to activate the bracelet. It soon became obvious that 1 flask of essence would not be enough and that much more would be needed. Dale wasn't worried about the amount of potion, but rather that the heroic genes wouldn't have enough strength to break through the monster's genes. This meant that he simply wouldn't be able to direct energy into the bracelet. Beatrice was the first to discover the monster and tried to confront it, but was defeated. Roger immediately came to her aid and caught the invisible monster in a trap. He already knew that the other monster had also been detained and told her to go look for the remaining one. Although Beatrice had several serious wounds, she bravely went to carry out the task assigned to her. Thanks to his ability to control the wind, this became much easier to do. It was thanks to this that she spotted the students entering the forest. Approaching them, she demanded that everyone return to the academy immediately. The last monster also appeared here, which significantly worsened the situation. The brave students immediately rushed to attack the enemy. They were too self-confident, and Beatrice did not have time to do anything to stop them. In an instant, one student was destroyed by the monster and Zack lost his arm. To prevent another death, Beatrice grabbed the boy and pulled him aside. But neither her convictions nor what happened convinced the students of the need to leave here. Eventually, Beatrice gave up her plan and resigned herself to their decision. So she stepped forward, taking command. Michelle and the other liquidators were still engaged in a fierce battle with another invisible enemy. Thanks to her last attack, they managed to break the monster's invisibility. She expected it to be a normal level 4 monster, but she soon realized she was wrong. Droid took the brunt of the monster's attack, telling his teammates to run to the academy and ask for help. During this time, Dale found a solution to his problem. He realized that the monster genes themselves contained enormous reserves of vital energy, which is what the essence was made of. Therefore, the hero decided to simplify the task and use the monster genes instead of this essence. As soon as he used his monster genes, the bracelet immediately activated. Soon, he completely took on the form of Dale's hand, simultaneously studying the structure of his heroic genes. Thanks to this device, the hero will be able to artificially increase the percentage of his genes and create his own star map. Now all he has to do is force the monster's genes to evolve. This task turned out to be much more difficult. The genes went wild and refused to obey. A couple of the monster's attacks were enough to knock out the students and destroy their faith in Beatrice's victory. In order to be of some use, she decided to take desperate measures, to blow herself up with the force of the wind. She hoped that the wind generated by the explosion would carry the students away from here. Beatrice had barely managed to summon the wind when she was suddenly yanked by the hair and pulled to the side. Dale believed that it was too early for her to sacrifice herself. But instead of gratitude for her help, he had to listen to her angry tirade. When the invisible enemy attacked, the hero quickly reacted and stopped the attack. Beatrice was shocked by this, because many had suffered the same attempt to contain the blow. The next moment, Dale enveloped his opponent's entire body in blue flames. Beatrice couldn't believe her own guess that the guy in front of her was the wanted criminal Blue Flame. Deciding to take advantage of her fear, Dale told her to gather all the students and run as far as possible if she didn't want to die. After that, with one movement, he threw the girl aside. The hero himself was left alone with the enemy who had become visible. Xenia, Tyler, and Emma were still guarding the door of his room. Xenia did not answer any questions, saying that they simply needed to not let anyone inside. Soon, quiet footsteps were heard on the stairs, and Armand walked up to them, accompanied by Alex. Xenia immediately became wary and stepped forward, wondering what he needed there. He said that Dale was suspected of fraud, so he came here on behalf of the Academy to sort things out. He also warned that in case of resistance, the hero would be disqualified and the award would be taken away. Xenia had no intention of letting them in and firmly insisted that they come later. At that very moment, frightened cries were heard from below, indicating that many of those who had entered the forest had returned wounded. Someone also reported that a blue flame had appeared in the forest. Armin had some suspicions about him, so he again pressured the girl to go inside and find out everything for himself. But Xenia stood firm and was even ready to join the fight. Armand shared her desire in this, deciding to break through by force. Beatrice was completely confused by the sudden appearance of the criminal, but since he saved her and the students, she couldn't run away and leave him alone with the monster. She barely managed to use any technique when a stream of flame pierced the monster's mouth. Beatrice was even more shocked and confused to see Dale using the same flames as his opponent. Noticing her appearance, the hero asked with displeasure why she was still there. She confidently replied that the monster was now visible and she did not need to protect the students, so she could help. To confirm her words, Beatrice called upon the wind. This way they rose several meters higher, gaining an advantage over the monster. Dale praised her control of the elements. Therefore, he asked her to use her wind to launch him straight into the enemy's mouth. Although Beatrice didn't see the logic in this plan, she fulfilled the guy's request. Thanks to the wind, Dale easily managed to avoid the monster's direct attacks and get right into its mouth. With the claws of his right hand, he could easily tear the monster's body from the inside. Feeling a sharp pain, the monster let out a terrifying roar. Roger, who was holding his fellow creature, was horrified as he felt the monster go berserk. The third monster, which was held by the liquidators, also succumbed to rage. Dale realized that this wasn't just simple rage. These monsters were emitting the aura of the Monster Lord. The outgoing pressure from the monsters affected Beatrice, preventing her from using her powers. To avoid crashing to the ground, she tried to gather at least some of her strength, but she didn't have time, finding herself right on the monster's head. The situation became even more dangerous when dry branches began to wrap around her body, making it impossible for her to do anything. Once she was already on the brink of death, but her brother came to her aid. Despite the approach of the monster, he desperately tried to help her get out from under the rubble. Then, at the most desperate moment, their father came to their aid, boldly rushing at the monster. That day, he gave his life in an attempt to protect Beatrice and her brother. The girl was ready to say goodbye to life, but suddenly Dale came to her aid. But instead of gratitude, she shouted at him to run away from here and not to interfere if he didn't want to be eaten. Her words only made the guy laugh. And then, thanking her for the excellent job she had done as bait, he tossed her into a safe place. He himself created a devouring tentacle from his palm and directed it into the monster's tail, which is its second mouth. After eating a little, Dale transformed his tentacle into spikes. They instantly appeared and, increasing in size, began to pierce the monster's body from the inside. Beatrice was truly delighted by such an amazing spectacle. But the monster managed to get rid of the damaged tail and remain unharmed. Armin recognized Xenia's talent, but he knew that she had used up all her energy during the competition and was now unable to put up any resistance. Tyler also understood this and stepped forward, demanding that Armin leave here. He quickly got rid of the obstacle in his face with the help of his fiery palm, after which he expanded it, taking over the space around it. He did this to prevent Xenia from absorbing lightning energy directly from the air. This left her in a rather vulnerable situation. Therefore, when the fiery palm was directed at her, Xenia could do nothing. Armin headed straight to our hero's room. Xenia couldn't let this happen, so she miraculously managed to break through the fire and stop the guy. Contrary to Armin's expectations, she only needed to feel the element of lightning for the energy itself to begin to flow into her body. Without hesitation, she activated her star map and rushed towards him. What happened made Armin take their skirmish more seriously. To prevent her from breaking through further, he used all his fire, creating a wall of flame. Xenia was the first to run out of breath and jumped back. She noticed that her star map was currently using too much energy, so I tried to reproduce something similar to the Hand of Flame. The way she learned this so easily, right during the battle, caused more and more irritation and envy in Armand. But at that moment, they were overtaken by a powerful earthquake wave. At the same time, it became noticeable how the blue flame was trying to break through the wooden wall. Alex, standing with Armin, assumed that the monsters were about to break through to the academy and that they needed to leave immediately. The guy didn't argue, and putting safety first, headed away. Beatrice led the remaining students out of the forest and strictly forbade them to enter it again. Meanwhile, in the forest, the enraged monsters began to intertwine with each other. Despite his squad being ordered to retreat, Kyle continued to fight the enemy. He believed that it was too late to retreat and was ready to sacrifice himself for the sake of the others. But suddenly Dale appeared in front of him, interfering with these plans. The hero needed only one blow to knock out the liquidator. He understood that the monsters were now trying to transform into a stronger fifth-order monster. Therefore, I intended to prevent this from happening, but other liquidators were seriously hindering this. They believed that Dale was underestimating the monster and had simply decided to be a hero. Roger suddenly joined them, trying hard to contain the monster. As soon as the enemy was immobilized, Michelle intervened in the battle. Creating a sharp blade from the water element, she brought it down on the monster. But this attack barely managed to leave a couple of scratches on him. For Roger, this was enough to believe that together with the blue flame, they would be able to achieve victory. So, inspired, he told everyone to get ready for a new attack and clear the way for Michelle and Dale. The liquidators did not object and were ready to do anything to help the newly formed attack group. When the monster was about to attack again, the hero stepped forward, saying that they alone would not be able to deal with this monster. That's why I took all the work upon myself. Dale hadn't planned on revealing his power to them, but now it was necessary to prevent disaster. With his attack, he unleashed the full power of a fourth-level monster. The terrifying aura that enveloped the forest made everyone freeze. The monster began to scream angrily that Dale should not have existed. Having summoned his flame, the hero was the first to rush at him, and the next moment, a huge ball of blue flame fell upon the monster. This attack managed to destroy one of the enemy's heads, but it quickly began to regenerate back. Engrossed in the fight, Dale didn't notice the tentacle behind him and was thrown down. But he quickly got to his feet and grappled with him again, explaining along the way how this monster differed from the others. Michelle suggested combining forces and hitting the monster together to increase the damage. However, Dale didn't see any point in this. He was going to show them how much stronger they would have to become to be able to protect this world in the future. Immediately after these words, he used Domain, the true power hidden in the blue flame. The rest immediately found themselves within the range of his technique. Kyle was surprised to feel that his iron element floating in the air had been completely absorbed. Roger quickly realized that it wasn't just the iron element. The Domain had absorbed absolutely every element around it. This also meant that they would not be able to use their powers here, otherwise they would be immediately consumed by the flames. Some people wanted to give in to their instincts and run away from here. But Michelle explained that none of them would be able to do this. The reason was that the region was like the mouth of a monster, from which there was no way back. But the monster did not know this and began to slowly retreat back, driving itself further and further into a trap. Right before the eyes of the liquidators, a huge dark mouth closed over the monster. And then it swallowed her up completely, leaving no trace. As Dale absorbed the remaining energy from his opponent, Roger remembered seeing something like this once before. At that time, a fifth-order monster single-handedly destroyed 5 of the strongest people of that time. He himself was far from the epicenter of the battle and did not see everything that was happening. But he remembered well the area of that monster, which was the same as Dale's. As soon as the monster was finally devoured, a column of blue flame rose into the sky, destroying the effect of the area. It was so high that it could even be seen from the academy dormitory. Far beyond the academy, Armin also saw this blue flame and felt the eerie aura emanating from it. After absorbing a monster with the Overlord's power, Dale will need time to digest everything and master the new power. But he didn't have the opportunity to do this. Having felt this powerful surge of power, the underground dragon accurately determined his position. Dale barely had time to do anything when Michelle rushed into battle. Roger also joined in and created a wooden wall around the monster. When the guys from the Bureau joined the fight, Dale was genuinely glad that he now had so many bodyguards. But the dragon found another way to him. From underground, many small tentacles stretched out towards the hero. Dale got rid of them easily. However, there was one he still couldn't dodge. When this happened, the hero realized that the dragon's goal was to connect him to the network of monsters. At the same time, he felt the absorbed power of the Monster Lord begin to leave him. Dale simply couldn't allow this to happen and began to forcefully pull that power back in. The dragon influenced his consciousness, trying to break it and take possession of the power he desired. But the hero was not going to give in to him, and the dragon decided to take extreme measures. To kill Dale. But by this point, he had already managed to eat and digest the Overlord's power and become a completely new kind of monster. Because of this, the monster network began to weaken, and soon it completely collapsed. Along with the disappearance of the dragon, our hero also disappeared, in order to avoid many unnecessary questions. Having made his way through the forest, he made his way like an unnoticed shadow to his dorm balcony. Even though the current Monster Lord was alive, Dale was able to become the new lord and could even found his own clan. Returning to his uncle's laboratory, Armin apologized for disgracing the family and not winning the competition. Douglas didn't blame him, understanding that an ordinary first-year student wouldn't be able to stand up to the blue flame. He then asked 2 of his subordinates to share their impressions of the criminal, whom they had already encountered twice. The first man reported that their opponent was on a completely different level. His strength was simply unmatched. But when faced with Armand's cold gaze, he suddenly stopped. He didn't have time to say more because Douglas gave the order to join the capture group and try to attack the criminal. He advised Armand to forget about the blue flame and focus on the flower of eternity to strengthen his flame. Understanding perfectly well that this flower could either devour him or grant him strength, Armand did not retreat from his goal. When the hole in the flower he had worked so hard to create suddenly closed, rage and despair began to envelop him. But at that very moment, he heard a voice in his head asking if he wanted to get the blue flame. At first, Armand thought he was imagining things, but the flower offered a deal. Its power in exchange for the lives of the carriers of the monster gene. When Dale returned, Xenia was taking a shower and unfortunately forgot to take clothes. The hero was too busy studying his own powers and did not understand his friend's problems. But he couldn't listen to her complaints any longer, so he used his tentacles to hand her the t-shirt. Having dressed, Xenia approached her friend, wondering what he was so busy with. Instead of a clear answer, he suddenly asked if he could introduce his gene into her. Xenia naturally took this request the wrong way and did not support this idea. When Dale continued to stand his ground, she had to resort to her strength to calm him down. Only from his friend's violent reaction did the hero realize that she might have misunderstood him. He also realized that if he transferred part of the Lord's power to her, he did not know what it could lead to. So he decided that he should find another test subject and try to transfer the powers to him. Heading into the forest, he met the ideal test subject, a mouse. She couldn't withstand all of Dale's strength and began to turn into another monster. The hero expected such an outcome, but was still disappointed. Suddenly, he noticed someone's presence nearby and attacked first. Then he demanded that the unknown person show himself. At that moment, Roger emerged from behind the bushes and admitted that he knew that Dale was the blue flame. But he had no intention of harming him, and came here for another reason. By playing dumb, the hero made it clear that he had no idea about this criminal and could not possibly be him. After which, he said goodnight and tried to return back to the hostel. Here, the director offered to share the essence of life in exchange for a short conversation. This proposal could not fail to interest Dale. Offering more favorable conditions, Roger said that it was not at all because of his genes that he noticed him and helped him get in here. As the curator of a research project, he became interested in the results of Dale's school examination. He spent many years researching the monster's genes and studying their carriers. Research has shown that people with heroic genes stand out for their intelligence and resilience. Certain distinctive features were also identified for carriers of the monster gene. When the man confidently said that along with the heroic genes, Dale also had the genes of a monster, he cringed. Roger was even willing to help the guy go through the necessary procedures to make sure, but he quickly refused. Before he could leave, the director told how he found Blue Flame hiding the essence in this forest. When the hero realized that it was his essence that Roger wanted to share with him, he could not hide his displeasure. The director repeated his words about not intending to harm him and not considering Dale's attack on the lances to be an act of villainy. As proof of his words, he said that it was he who asked Michelle to cover for his absence on the night of the attack. Also today, I sent a man to the outskirts of the academy grounds to simulate traces of the Blue Flame's appearance. Roger was going to continue helping him, but he wanted to know how Dale had managed to control the monster genes. He held out hope that the rest of the many carriers of this gene would also be able to live a normal life. Although the director's goals were good, the hero had no intention of helping to achieve them. Perplexed by his refusal, Roger again tried to convey to him the idea of the need for a way to control the monster's genes. To make him realize the reality of what was happening, Dale admitted that he actually had such a way. Afterwards, I asked the director about how the rest of humanity would react to this, and whether the world would be plunged into panic. His words left the man truly confused. Dale explained that the monsters have not been fully studied and are now similar to ants gathered in an anthill. And he, Blue Flame, by chance became the king of one of the colonies, who can lure other ants to his side. Now Roger began to understand what risks the hero was telling him about. If the Blue Flame becomes the ruler of all carriers of the monster gene, the world will not be able to ignore such a power and will perceive it as a threat. He realized the difficult choice Dale faced: save these people or become a threat to the entire world. Therefore, he was ready to support any of them and provide support to the academy. Dale liked the man's words, so he shared with him some of the Blue Flame's plans. Meanwhile, at the research center, Armin collected several carriers of the monster gene. He led them to the most remote corner of the center, where he promised the flower of eternity would appear. It didn't take long for him to appear, and his stems appeared here almost immediately. In a split second, he devoured all the monster gene carriers present. But this was not enough for him. Having taken over the body of one of the victims, he demanded a host who could withstand his flame. Only then was he ready to fulfill his condition and give Armand power. Returning back to his place, Dale hoped that Xenia had already gone to bed long ago. But the girl had been waiting for him all this time, and now wanted to know where he had been all this time. She didn't believe his words about meeting with the director and vented all her indignation over his ridiculous proposal with a fly swatter. But her anger quickly changed to mercy. Xenia guessed that this proposal was somehow connected with the influence of his monster genes. That's why she agreed to let Dale introduce his gene into her. She was not prepared for the fact that the next moment her friend's tentacle would attach itself to her neck, and she expected something completely different. Once the gene was introduced, the boy did not hide his disappointment that her genes could not coexist with his overlord gene. It immediately occurred to him that only a fellow carrier of the monster gene would be suitable for this purpose. But Xenia was no longer interested in this. Citing fatigue, she hurried to climb onto her bed. Because she had misunderstood everything, she was tormented by a wild feeling of shame and did not care about anything else. The next morning, her mood worsened even more when she saw Dale looking at a photo of a strange girl. He explained that she was the director's granddaughter and a student at the Academy for Monster Gene Carriers. Dale was planning to meet Ashley, the owner of the strongest monster genes in the country, which he had arranged with the director. Xenia could not let him go alone and firmly declared that she would go with him. So the two of them reached the bus stop in an unusual state of tension, and the late bus spoiled the girl's mood more and more. Just as Dale was about to discuss what was happening with Xenia, their long-awaited bus appeared. Only the driver was a contract killer. The hero immediately recognized that this was not just a killer, but an awakened being with 4 stars. So he instantly activated the power glove and created a metal blade. With one swing, he managed to cut the bus into 2 parts. The killer did not expect such a level of mastery of the element from his target. He had hoped to avoid a battle, but the situation forced him to act differently. Soon, the entire space around him was engulfed in raging flames. But for our hero, it was not a problem. Dale's next attack sliced open the killer's head. As soon as he was finished, he reported the incident to the director and asked him to sort it out. Xenia believed that he could simply eat the man, but the hero believed that it would be more useful to hand over his body to the director for research. At this time, Ashley was undergoing a risk assessment at a specialized hospital. The doctor was too concerned about her large number of genes and her emotional state, so she gave her a failing grade. As soon as Ashley left the office, she received a call from her grandfather. Roger was interested in the test results, which Ashley made no attempt to hide. His words that a person who could help her would soon come to the hospital greatly surprised the girl. But the information that she could only help one person made her doubt. There were others who needed help. Worried that his granddaughter would refuse rescue, he said that the number of gene rescues would soon increase. His granddaughter had the highest percentage of monster genes and could transform at any moment, so he prioritized her life. He tried to convey this to Ashley herself, but she simply hung up. He could only hope that Dale would choose his granddaughter and save her from the influence of genes. Ashley's classmate, who was more prone to emotions and could also lose control at any moment, was also in the same hospital. The guys standing nearby tried to reason with him, reminding him of the need to remain calm. But all their efforts were in vain. Only a call from Norman's sister made him calm down. Beatrice was at the hospital's door to pick up her brother after the tests. She had only flown down 10 steps when suddenly the ground below began to crack, and then it collapsed completely along with the people. Now all the stones threatened to fall on the first floor, where there were a large number of people. To avoid their deaths, Beatrice resorted to the help of her wind. This is how she managed to help the falling people avoid being killed and those below avoid being harmed. Without further ado, she told them to run away from here as quickly as possible to a safe place. But no one was going to do this, believing that being near Beatrice was much safer. When she announced that she was going to climb to the 18th floor, no one supported her idea. Everyone knew that only carriers of the monster gene were gathered there, and going there was suicide. Suddenly, the monster gene of the girl next to them was activated. Panicked, the others pointed out to Beatrice that she had to get rid of such monsters. But the girl hesitated, and the gene carrier was unable to resist the mutation and turned into a monster. Her friend followed suit. In this situation, Beatrice had no choice but to destroy them both. Dale and Xenia were picked up by a car sent by Roger and were now halfway to the hospital. Just at this time, our hero received a message that the hospital had suddenly begun to collapse and go underground. What was happening greatly alarmed the hero, because nothing like this had happened in his past life. After asking to speed things up, Dale agreed to help the hospital and asked the director for a small favor. Meanwhile, Emma and Tyler tried to satisfy their insatiable hunger by eating their way through the cafeteria, but they couldn't do it. Then Emma remembered about the essence of life, which could help them. Here, Tyler also remembered that someone had stolen his bottle of elixir and intended to return it immediately. Emma knew it was useless to stop him, so she only warned him that he should be careful with his power. The guy quickly found himself at the other end of the dining room, where Eli was with his team. He, true to himself, mocked Tyler for joining the wrong master and being left with nothing. David foresaw the impending fight and tried to stop his old friend, but he did not listen to him. Tyler hadn't yet realized how much his strength had increased, so he didn't hold back when he struck. But fortunately for him, Eli was not dead, but merely unconscious. Just then, Michelle appeared in the dining room and invited him and Emma to join her on a mission. The one who sent the request for help to the director and the liquidation bureau was the head of the hospital. She herself was afraid to do anything, but she hoped, fearing to harm the people stuck under the collapse. Since the hospital had 2 safe exits, she called in 2 liquidation teams. Just at this moment, Dale's friends arrived and were the first to respond to her call for help. Seeing that there was only 1 detachment here, the woman became despondent and did not believe that the children could help. But thanks to the employees' consolation, she was able to pull herself together and agreed to accept help from our heroes. As soon as this happened, Xenia called Dale and informed him that their squad had been accepted and he no longer needed to detain the others. 20 minutes earlier, Michelle blocked one of the paths leading to the hospital, preventing the liquidators from passing. And the other way was blocked by Dale himself. At first, he tried to resolve everything peacefully, but was ignored by the other students. Therefore, without a drop of regret, the hero moved on to more decisive methods. Having created a huge iron sword, he barricaded the passage, narrowly missing his fellow students. After this, he again asked them to simply listen to him. But each of them was hostile towards him and was about to engage in battle. and he was ready to fight all of them at once. However, his opponents did not succumb to this provocation. Casper stepped forward, determined to confront the hero alone. He was considered one of the strongest students and was quite skilled in sword fighting. Dale decided to transform his iron sword into a huge, heavy mace. The ease with which he wielded the weapon amazed everyone. Casper tensed up, trying to figure out how his opponent would act next. When Dale lowered the mace near him, the swordsman immediately chopped off one part of it. But even after this, the mace remained just as huge, and the next moment the hero threw him aside like a ball with a baseball bat. With the same blow, he hit everyone else, knocking them out. The seniors couldn't stand such humiliation and were determined to show Dale his place at any cost. But even 20 minutes later, they were unable to do this, and the hero received a message from Senia. Inside, Ashley and her friends were able to find shelter from the monsters inside the uncollapsed part of the hospital. The girl was sure that they only needed to wait a little and they would be rescued. Only one of the guys was already at his limit and could barely restrain himself from transforming. She tried to help him calm down his strong emotions. But the roar that suddenly came from behind the door frightened not only her, but all of them here. A new surge of emotions triggered an irreversible transformation process in Killian, and soon he completely lost his human appearance. All three were left in a dangerous situation, and something had to be done urgently. Kieran decided to sacrifice himself and stop the monster, giving his friends the opportunity to escape. But before he could do anything, a blue flame suddenly burst out from under the floor and took the monster with it. None of them had any idea what was going on. Having decided that there were liquidators down there and that this was a shortcut to freedom, Carlos decided to go down. But Kieran knew they couldn't be so lucky and tried to stop his friend from making a mistake. Ashley also thought that they should be more careful and not do anything impulsive. Kieran decided to check the situation outside and see if it was possible to leave this shelter. But as soon as he opened the door a crack, he saw that the corridor was completely teeming with monsters. The guy immediately closed the door, saying it was too dangerous there. In this situation, they found themselves in a dead end. Death awaited them outside, and a possible trap below. By this time, Beatrice had managed to lead people from the lower floors to the safety of the fourth. Other liquidators were also there. Alex talked about how, by a lucky chance, he ended up here with his partner and helped with the rescue operation. The girl found the condition of the hospital guards who were nearby strange. Alex quickly approached her, offering her some rest after the exhausting rescue of people. After his words, a strange feeling came over her, and an obsessive voice sounded in her head, trying to put her to sleep. However, she managed to overcome this by refusing the offered rest. She said that she would go to the 18th floor. He didn't answer. He was too surprised that his hypnosis didn't work on her. Then his partner intervened and said that it was too dangerous on that floor because of the monster gene carriers. But he reassured her that the staff should be fine thanks to special protective rooms. Of course, there was no talk about the safety of the carriers themselves, which scared Beatrice the most because her brother was there. So, despite all the warnings, she went to the 18th floor. But Alex and Felix had their own mission from the head of the Lance family, which Beatrice could interfere with. At this time, our hero, together with the head of the hospital, reached one of the safe exits, hidden underground. One of the liquidators who led the rescue operation did not allow them to enter inside. He insisted on conducting special training before such a responsible mission. Dale couldn't stand his screams for long and decided to intervene. He pointed out to the man that if anyone were to die during this preparation time, all responsibility would fall on his shoulders. Tom didn't like the fact that some child was threatening him. Sensing his inner resentment, Dale used mental pressure with the power of the Overlord. This had such a strong impact on him that the liquidator could not utter a word. Michelle's patience was also at its limit, so she demanded that he get out of the way and let them inside. The man had no choice but to let the group of kids pass. Coming to his senses, he turned around and asked the man if this was an order from the Lance family. He visibly tensed up, but tried to pretend that he had no idea what they were talking about. But this was enough for the hero to be convinced of his suspicions. Meanwhile, Alex and his partner followed Beatrice to the stairs leading up. Thanks to her control over the wind, the girl immediately sensed her pursuers and set a trap. After wrapping wind lines around Alex's neck, she asked what they had done to the guards and what their purpose was. He didn't intend to answer, but instead launched a mental attack at her. While Beatrice tried to resist this, Felix made his move. The girl barely managed to dodge his sneak attack. It was difficult for her to do anything else in this situation, because her opponents controlled every moment of what was happening. Beatrice could no longer resist the repeated mental attack. And the next moment, a powerful stream of icy water fell upon her. This attack did not kill her, but it did cause quite serious damage. Before another attack could reach her, Beatrice gathered the last of her strength and tried to escape. Two men immediately rushed after her. Having overcome the entire tunnel of destroyed walls, they were still unable to catch up with her. They were too focused on catching her and didn't notice how the exit was slowly starting to become overgrown with branches. Having separated from the team, our hero sent his friends on further along with Nick. He didn't understand this balance of power because Dale himself remained in the second rescue team. Xenia believed that this was directly related to the academy director's granddaughter and was terribly angry. Having hit the wall in front of him, Nick immediately activated his card and created a deep cut. Just a few moments later, the passage was ready. Right behind him were the people they needed to get out. On the other side, Dale and his guide also reached the wall behind which the hospital was located. But as soon as his companion made a tunnel, our hero disappeared without a trace. He had already managed to get inside and find the guards sleeping against the wall. With a little effort, he managed to wake up one of them. He then went to the elevator, assuming that his destination was on the top floor, but the passage was blocked. When I changed course for the stairs, I smelled the scent of heroic jeans in the air. Here, he also discovered traces of the battle left after Beatrice's fight with Alex and Felix. After carefully examining the stems, Dale realized that even the Lord of Flame himself was involved in this matter. When these monstrous stalks noticed him, the hero was glad that he would not have to lure the Overlord out himself. But there was also a significant downside. He couldn't cope with it yet. Even if he had all the power of a monster lord now, he wouldn't have a chance to defeat this monster. Dodging the attacks, he tried to understand what the point was for this monster to cooperate with the Lance family. But soon he himself realized that the target of the pogrom of this hospital was the carriers of strong monster genes. To slightly improve his chances in this fight, he entered his level 4 monster lord form. Now it was easier for him to fight back and resist the stems. Without wasting any more time, Dale decided to make his own way to the top. Felix still managed to catch up with Beatrice, and now, striking blow after blow, he tried to find out why she was so desperate to get to the top floor. Previously, he envied her strength, but now he brought his brilliant rival down to earth. Suddenly, the wall next to him collapsed and Dale appeared. He immediately snatched Beatrice from Felix's hands. Panicking, he decided to kill both the girl and our hero at once. To absorb this technique, Dale didn't even need to create blue flames. And then he grabbed Felix by the head and engulfed his entire body in flames. Alex had encountered the blue flame before, so he recognized it immediately. That's why he didn't even try to attack, but immediately rushed away from there. But he didn't manage to run far. The monster quickly caught up with him and devoured him. Dale decided not to linger here and quickly dived into the opening. Once in a safe place, he tried to wake Beatrice. Of course, she also recognized him, despite his changed appearance, and was embarrassed to see him so close. Therefore, with the help of the wind, she slipped out of his hands. But because of her broken arms, it became difficult to control the wind and she fell to the floor. When a monster suddenly appeared nearby, she quickly asked Dale to put her on his back. He fulfilled her request, and together they headed upwards in rapid leaps. Although they managed to break through to the top, the monster did not even think of leaving them behind. Beatrice's strength was rapidly depleting, and Dale couldn't help but notice. Despite her condition, the girl was ready to go to the very end, so he had no choice but to help her. Without her noticing, he injected her with a small dose of monster genes to boost her genes and restore her strength. Beatrice screamed at the sudden flash of pain. But just a couple of moments later, she felt how the power began to overwhelm her. Now they covered floor after floor with even greater speed. All this time, Armin was with the Lord of Flame. When Dale walked into the trap set for him, the Overlord decided to fulfill his part of the deal and reward the boy with his power. Blue flames enveloped the left side of Armand's body, but did no harm. During this time, Ashley and the guys still couldn't find a way to get out of there. So she decided to break through and fight her way out through the wall. But the monster's tentacles immediately crawled inside through the hole. Exactly the same ones appeared from the hole in the floor, driving the boys into a dead end. At some point, Armin emerged from these tentacles. Carlos felt a surge of hope that they would finally be rescued. But Armin immediately made it clear that he came here as a liquidator and that he had no intention of saving monsters. And the next moment, he attacked Carlos. Ashley and Killian were of great value to him, so he simply immobilized them with his tentacles. At that moment, our hero appeared with Beatrice on his shoulders. Noticing him, Armin was not surprised, only saying that this time they were on equal terms and he would not lose to Dale again. The hero tensed slightly, realizing that his opponent had finally revealed his identity. Beatrice, sitting on his back, tried to figure out when the two had already crossed paths. Armin was the first to make his move. He turned his hand into a monster's paw and attacked. Dodging, Dale threw the girl aside to Armand's hostages and asked her to find a way to free them. Armand didn't pay any attention to this, carried away by the battle. The force of their blows shook even the walls, making Beatrice doubt whether they were really ordinary people. But she was distracted from these thoughts by the voice of her brother, whom the strange tentacles were ready to bite. The tentacles targeted not only him, but also his two friends. Beatrice faced a difficult task: stop all the tentacles without hurting the boys. Trying not to think about the possible risks, the girl relied entirely on her element. Putting some pressure on Dale, Armin revealed that the Lord of Flame himself was on his side, and that he was too much for the hero to handle. He even gained access to the skills of 4th-level monsters. Dale, however, was in no hurry to do anything until he had enough information. Armin mistook this for weakness and decided to get rid of the enemy once and for all. But Dale managed to avoid his deadly attack. In those few minutes, he understood the nature of Armin's power and asked if he realized what he was doing. He honestly admitted that he was leading this world to greatness and power over its destiny. The hero still deftly dodged and fought off his subsequent attacks. Afterwards, having gotten rid of Armin's tentacles, he decided to close the distance between them. With a sharp movement, he pierced his opponent's shoulder, trying to convey that this would only plunge the world into chaos. Getting through to Armin turned out to be much more difficult. The mistaken belief in the correctness of his actions lived too strongly in him. In place of his severed hands, he created a huge hand of blue flame. Although Armin's increased strength surprised the hero, it was no more than that. His opponent was still weak to him. Therefore, the next moment he easily broke through the fiery hand and caught up with the enemy. Coming close to him, Dale saw how the monster's power devoured Armin's genes, thereby killing him. He offered him his help to get rid of this power and become human again. But Armin could not so easily give up the power he had acquired with such difficulty. So before Dale could absorb his monster genes, he summoned a monster. To the accompaniment of the guy's angry cry, the monster's wide-open mouth fell upon our hero. But the monster couldn't do anything to him. Dale destroyed him with his flame in that very moment. Here, 4 more monsters broke through the walls. To avoid having to deal with each one individually, the hero released an area around himself, protecting himself from the attack. He himself approached Armin again, saying that he was an idiot for being ready to die for the sake of monsters. In the middle of their conversation, the area he created was destroyed by a black sphere. Dale, seeing this small black ball, was horrified. In his past life, he had already seen it. The hellish flame that had brought with it a terrifying, crushing power. And now he wondered why it was here. Armin laughed evilly when he learned of the power of the Lord of Flame. Here, strong tentacles wrapped around our hero's arms. Before the sphere could get dangerously close to him, Dale decided to try to pierce it with his blade. He even strengthened it beforehand to the level of an underground dragon's teeth. But even so, the blade was easily melted, and the hellish flames, remaining unharmed, moved on. Mocking him, Armin said that people were powerless against the power of the Lord. But Dale knew that monsters were afraid of people, just as people were afraid of monsters. Therefore, he was confident that with the help of heroic genes, he could get rid of the hellfire. Sharply pushing him into the wall, Armin did not allow him to touch this black sphere. Along with the words about the monsters being much stronger, Armin directed several dozen tentacles at him. It was then that Dale stopped holding back, and all the tentacles were instantly engulfed in blue flames. Meanwhile, his team was successfully rescuing civilians. Of course, all the main work was done by a bureau employee, which is what he was dissatisfied with. And the 3 kids just stood guard along the way in case a monster appeared, which the man really didn't like. He sincerely did not understand how students who had barely realized their strength would be able to fight monsters. Just at that moment, a whole crowd of monsters appeared in the path of our heroes. Jay rushed towards the kids, shouting that they shouldn't engage in battle. But Tyler ignored him and attacked the monsters with precise movements, causing severe damage. Emma also joined the fight and helped her brother with her vines. Xenia also did not stand aside, attacking her opponents with a powerful flash of electricity. The man watching their actions was shocked. As the trio rushed off into the depths, he asked in bewilderment how ordinary first-year students could be so strong. But a sudden rumble behind him drew his attention back to what was happening. This time, the heroes encountered a stronger monster and were unable to fight it off. To protect them, Jay created a strong stone wall. However, it was easily destroyed by just one blow from the monster. The man was not strong in attack, so now he was in real horror. In his last attempt to stop his opponent, he created a diamond wall in front of him, absorbing the monster's arm up to the elbow. But this defense, created from his last strength, was also destroyed. Taking advantage of the moment, Michelle pulled Jay out of the epicenter of what was happening. When the man asked her to save the children, she replied that it was not her job. The reason was that she was confident in the abilities of these 3, and therefore did not intend to interfere. When the electrical sphere created by Ksenia began to grow, she told the man to run and take all the people away from here. The man didn't even think of arguing with her. He immediately ran away, fearing that Ksenia's power would destroy everything around him. Michelle herself, who chose to stay, had to dodge small electric shocks. Soon, Tyler and Emma jumped out of the sphere, realizing the danger of the situation. When Emma tried to enter the sphere with the help of her dragon, she failed. But she realized that if something wasn't done, Ksenia would turn into a real atomic bomb. The monster, all this time trying to break through the area created by the girl, was gradually losing its limbs. Michelle saw that the domain was unstable and could crumble at any moment, releasing destructive power. So she tried to carefully introduce her water domain, which could merge with anything inside. This is how she managed to successfully approach the girl. They didn't have much time to talk, because the monster had already evolved and was now trying to break through again. Ksenia immediately began to create an electric ball in her palms, but Michelle stopped her, shouting that she would destroy the entire hospital. When Ksenia admitted that she couldn't stop it, she had to take control of the situation. Using her ability, Michelle was able to transfer energy from the sphere into the pipe, and then she asked Ksenia to return 90% of her powers back to her body. The girl herself did not understand how to do this, so Michelle had to force her to absorb the power herself. She left herself only 10% for the attack, hoping that it would not lead to even greater destruction of the building. When she attacked, the monster was swept aside by a powerful stream, and the hospital remained intact. Since Xenia's body contained a high percentage of heroic genes, Michelle warned her about the need to keep her power under control. It seemed that their fight was over, but suddenly the body of the defeated monster was wrapped in the tentacles of another. Only when his strength was restored and his lust for murder intensified did the tentacles retreat. Dale rushed straight toward the sphere and put all his strength into activating the monster's elemental star map. Watching him, Armin remembered the conversation with his uncle when they discussed whether monsters could use star cards. The man assumed that this was possible in theory, but that they would have to be monsters with an incredibly large number of genes. When Dale's attack hit the sphere, it flew back an impressive distance. Armand believed that his opponent was stupid and could not sensibly assess his strength. But when the wall behind him was destroyed without a trace, he was shocked. On the lower floors, Michelle continued her battle. The moment the building shook, she feared that her attacks were too strong and could damage the building. But she quickly realized that this was not the case, and that the earthquake was caused by someone else's battle. Armin couldn't help but be glad that the Lord of Flame's tentacles were supporting this building. Otherwise, everything would have collapsed long ago. The hellish flame itself remained unharmed, only slightly diminished. After this, Dale's words about the monsters being afraid of the Liquidator's power are even more nonsense. As if trying to prove the opposite, the hero activated his card again, creating several fire spheres. They were all aimed at the remnants of Hellfire. This made Armand guess that the percentage of monster genes in Dale could reach more than 90%. The echoes of this battle were also felt outside in the form of light earthquakes. The hospital director demanded that the Liquidator not delay any longer and send reinforcements inside. But he stood his ground, trying to buy as much time as possible for Armin. Despite his claims that everything was under control, an even stronger wave shook the earth. Badly battered by Dale's attacks, Armin struggled to comprehend what was happening and the true strength of his opponent. Lost in his thoughts, he didn't even have time to notice how Dale slipped out from under his nose. Only the voice of the Flame Lord heard behind him brought him to his senses. Meanwhile, the hero tried to get as far away from this monster as possible, realizing that fighting him would be suicide. He soon reached the room where he left Beatrice. Without wasting any time, Dale asked her how many people she could carry with her. When she replied that she could take everyone away, he told her to immediately climb onto his back and quickly lower everyone down. Thanks to the constant infusion of monster genes into them, they moved quite quickly. Suddenly, Killian felt a sharp pain and grabbed his neck. Beatrice sensed that something was wrong and looked around, asking about his condition. Dale also looked back and noticed that there was something wrong with the collars of this guy and Ashley. As tentacles began to emerge from the collars, he realized that the power of the Flame Lord was within them. To prevent them from turning, Dale decided to act preemptively and infuse them with his monster genes. To add to the existing problem, the building began to rapidly collapse. To prevent them from being buried under the debris, Beatrice had to create powerful wind currents that pushed the stones back. Soon, the Lord of Flame came out from the destroyed wall to meet them, and Armin followed him. It was the first time Beatrice had seen a monster in such a strange form, and she was quite scared. She instinctively sensed the enemy's strength and seemed like a pitiful fly in comparison. She was brought out of these sensations by a light slap on her thigh from Dale. Having found his victims here, the Lord said that it was all over for them and that he was about to rob them of a new body. It wasn't difficult for the hero to realize that the monster was targeting Ashley and Killian. Therefore, he confidently stated that he would never receive them. At the moment, his own genes were fighting against the Overlord's genes in their bodies, slowing down the conversion. The monster was unhappy with his interference and decided to simply get rid of the obstacle. So, by sacrificing one leg, he filled the entire space around him with his flame. The tongues of blue flame easily reached the gene carriers and picked them up. Dale tensed and asked Beatrice to cover his back. He himself tried to bring Ashley and Killian back. The ruler did not want to give in to him, believing that these two already belonged to him. Ashley could already feel her body slowly spiraling out of control and her consciousness slowly crumbling. She remembered her grandfather telling her to never give up and always believe in the best. For a long time, she tried to adhere to his words. But not now, when her end was already near. Suddenly, Dale appeared in front of her and tore apart the tentacle holding her. The guess immediately arose in her head that this guy was the very savior that her grandfather had told her about. Our hero had barely managed to intervene when he heard the monster's enraged voice. But Dale was not afraid of him, because in the past, the Flame Lord had failed to destroy his soul. And the Lord himself had his own fears, which he also knew about. While his inner monster mentally fought with the Overlord, Dale told the hosts that he could only save one of them. This information surprised both of them, but Killian quickly made up his mind and pushed Ashley forward, saying that she was the most suitable candidate. Meanwhile, in reality, the Overlord sacrificed another of his arms and legs to increase the power of the flames and release the tentacles. They all immediately rushed towards Dale and Beatrice. The girl couldn't allow her partner to be disturbed, so she did everything she could to fight off the tentacles. But the ruler was not aiming at them, but at Carlos, who was standing a little further away. One of the tentacles accurately reached its target and pierced the guy's chest. A moment later, a monster appeared in Carlos's place. With a furious roar, he rushed at Beatrice. Although Carlos had turned into a monster, he did not lose his consciousness. Therefore, in order not to harm his friends, he destroyed himself, asking them to save Ashley and Killian as a last resort. It was painful for Beatrice to watch the scene of his self-sacrifice, but she could no longer do anything. The Flame Lord merely expressed his disappointment with his decision. To make things easier for his benefactor, Armand decided to take on Beatrice. Having created a fiery palm, he suddenly brought down his attack on her. She managed to defend herself with her wind and tried to figure out why the heir of the Lance family was helping the monster. He had no intention of letting her in on the details or listening to her sermons, but was simply determined to destroy her. Meanwhile, in her subconscious, Ashley scolded her friend for making such important decisions for her. She wanted to hit him hard, but since it was a mental world, she couldn't do much harm. Dale wanted to discuss one more thing with the girl, so he knocked out Killian with one click. Ashley wondered what would happen to the remaining person if Dale transferred some of his power to one of them. He replied that he would preserve his consciousness and control over his body after turning into a monster. Although it was impossible to defeat the Overlord with this now, it gave the others a chance to escape. Besides this, the girl had many more questions, which the hero tried to answer. In the end, she asked Dale to listen to her proposal. All this time, Beatrice, with all her might, held back Armand's fiery palms, preventing them from harming Dale. Even though her strength was at its limit, she could not allow herself to give up. At some point, the palms disappeared, and in their place, Armand himself appeared next to them, intending to end their fight with one blow. But at the critical moment, Killian came to his senses and intercepted the tentacles. Armand was sincerely perplexed as to where this guy got such power and speed. Due to shock, he even missed a direct attack. Beatrice's face lit up with a happy smile at the sight of her brother. The guy was beside himself with anger because Ashley did things her way and sacrificed herself for him. His words made Beatrice realize what had happened. Saying that victory was his, the Overlord pierced Ashley's chest with his tentacles. Killian was ready to fight to the last to get his friend back, and his increased strength allowed him to do so. But when he got to Ashley, the monster had disappeared without a trace. And the next moment, when his friend turned around, he realized that he was too late. The Lord had taken over her body. But since the monster had now achieved its goal, it saw no point in killing the guy and simply threw him aside. He was more interested in Dale, whom he saw as a threat to himself that needed to be gotten rid of. With a slight movement of his hand, the Overlord created a small sphere of hellish flame. And then he cheerfully suggested that Ashley's consciousness was still in this body, and that she and Dale were up to something. He could have easily destroyed their plan by destroying his brain, and he would have gotten rid of the previous owner of the body. Dale couldn't let that happen, so he also created a sphere of flame and threw it at the monster. But suddenly a pair of arms grew out from behind his back. Thanks to this, he was able to easily contain Dale's flames and remain unharmed. The next moment, the Overlord appeared close to our hero, saying that no monster would dare become the new Overlord. So he set out to take the Overlord's power and all the stolen monster genes from Dale. Dale was horrified to realize that this monster had already reached the 6th level, and now no one in the world could resist it. Therefore, in order to break free and not lose all his strength, he decided to sacrifice only a part. So he cut off his hand and instantly retreated to a safe distance with the help of Beatrice. The Lord of Flame was disappointed with such a small catch, but decided to devour these grains of power that he had received. Suddenly, a loud explosion thundered between them. At the sight of Michelle and Xenia appearing, the Flame Lord could not hold back a joyful smile. He could absorb them and become even stronger. Dale immediately put Beatrice down, saying that she should find her brother and move him to Michelle. Trying to contain her irritation at the scene she had witnessed, Xenia sent an electric ball towards the guy. As he approached, Beatrice began to worry that Xenia was going to kill Dale. When the ball burst and the body of the defeated monster appeared from it, he explained that she had simply transferred energy to him. After Beatrice rushed off to her brother, the hero immediately began to devour the monster provided to him. Michelle rushed to fight the Lord of Flame, demanding that Dale explain to her everything that happened here. By absorbing the monster, Dale resonated with its consciousness and met with one of Ashley's friends. In his past life, this guy was also his classmate at Monster Academy. Therefore, having explained everything that had happened, the hero offered to return his consciousness in the future and even his human form. The thought that he would be able to live undoubtedly made the boy happy, but he didn't want to live like a monster, preferring to die like a human. In the end, he only asked Dale to save Ashley and destroy all the monsters in this world. When his absorption was complete, the hero unleashed an incredible stream of flame on his opponent. But this attack did not cause the slightest harm to him. However, to his surprise, the next moment another arm grew from behind his back. The Lord of Flame had absolutely no idea why or where she came from. Ashley previously revealed that she intended to become a stumbling block for the Overlord and buy time. But Dale was against such a plan because the probability of failure was too high. Ashley believed that only she could handle this task. All she asked of Dale was that he become strong enough to save the world and bring her home. Having agreed to this, he warned that he would not be able to transfer all his power, but only protect from the control of the Lord of Flame. According to their plan, Ashley hid her consciousness deep within the monster's genes and now, taking advantage of the moment, tried to attack. But the Overlord easily intercepted her weak blow with his hand, and then he completely tore off the extra limb. This moment was enough for the monster to be distracted, and our hero was able to escape. By this time, another rescue team, led by Justin, had already arrived outside. The man was trying to figure out why the operation had never been launched when a group of civilians emerged from the tunnel with Michelle. The girl was truly furious and approached the man, demanding that he immediately contact headquarters. The hero asked Emma to go to the head of the clinic and get a bigger reward. Then Beatrice said, "Take your brother to the academy and ask the director to conduct a secret examination." A couple of hours later, he and Xenia visited Roger's office, where he told him everything that had happened. The man was upset and angry that his granddaughter could not be saved. But he couldn't blame Dale for this, because he knew Ashley's stubborn nature very well. Now he was more concerned about the Lance family, who were deeply involved in this story. Because this family had strong political support, they could not oppose them openly. So he asked Dale about what actions the monsters might take and what plans he himself had for the future. He suggested that the monsters' current goal was to provide their master with energy by devouring people. Based on this, I guessed that the upcoming national tournament would be a real feast for the Flame Lord. The man then asked what could contribute to the rapid development of Dale's powers. He said that now they should focus on someone more promising and outstanding. Since the element of electricity was everywhere in this world, Xenia was the ideal candidate. Dale mentioned his girlfriend because he knew the tournament would be held in the city that was home to the country's largest power plant. Already imagining the bills he would be presented with after the tournament, Roger was not at all thrilled with the guy's idea. Later, when the heroes left, the director asked his secretary to give Dale the original Absolute Zero technique. Although this technique would be useless for others, he believed that Dale would be able to help Xenia master it perfectly. He also asked her to provide the guy with everything he needed to prepare for the tournament. Immediately after this, he called his old friend, who was the head of the city where the tournament would be held. It's true that the relationship between them was quite complicated due to one story in the past. But when his friend agreed to listen to him, Roger described the situation and asked to run the nuclear power plant at full power for the duration of the tournament. Having called him a complete psycho, the other person immediately hung up. Literally a minute later, he called back and finally agreed to this service, setting many restrictions and asking for 10 billion. Such a sum would have hit Roger hard, but he was in no position to refuse. As soon as Armin returned to the laboratory, he faced the wrath of his father. He was extremely unhappy that his son had tarnished his reputation with his actions and had even kidnapped Richard's granddaughter. Smiling contentedly, Armin replied that he was acting only for the good of their family. But his father did not understand his views at all and demanded that his son focus on obtaining the eternal flame and studying the flower. And not without disappointment, he forbade him to do anything else but this, throwing him into the stem of a flower. In response to his actions, Armin only laughed and said that without him the man was not capable of anything. Moreover, he considered his father to be useless trash that needed to be gotten rid of. The man was stunned by his words, but he quickly came to his senses and decided to tear all the eternal flame out of his ungrateful son. Douglas tried to calm his brother, worried about his nephew, but he was adamant in his decision. Armin didn't just stand and wait. Instead, he created several tentacles and attacked his father. None of the men understood what it was. A moment later, the tentacles burst into blue flames, which the head of the Lance family had been so eager to obtain. Here the Lord appeared right in front of the man, considering him suitable for the role of food. With a precise movement, he pierced his victim's chest with his bare hand. The head of the family only now realized that the girl in front of him was not Ashley and not even human. Confirming his guess, Armand said that she was the flower of eternity that they had been trying so hard to awaken. Frightened and perplexed, Douglas demanded that his nephew let his brother go. But it was too late. The Lord of Flame mercilessly devoured him. Although it was belated, Douglas began to realize that Armand had planned all of this from the very beginning, removing all the security. He didn't deny it, and admitted that he had long been planning to get rid of his father because of his uselessness, and now was the best moment. He then announced that he was planning to create a human farm and invited his uncle to join this plan. He understood that his nephew's idea was complete madness and was in no hurry to agree. Then Armin put pressure on him, saying that if he refused, he would repeat the fate of his brother and become food for the monster. The man didn't want this, so he was forced to take his nephew's side. Once their alliance was cemented, Armand joyfully announced that from tomorrow they would each be offering one person to the Lord. Suddenly, the monster intervened in the conversation and said contentedly that one would not be enough and that he needed 3 people of the 3-star level per day. Roger took the threat of world destruction seriously, so on his orders, teachers began preparing students to fight monsters. Dale and Cassinia were exempted from these training sessions, which caused envy and irritation among their classmates. William explained that they were the strongest students this year, so their program was very different from the usual. Here Michelle, who had been appointed his and Cassinia's personal mentor, approached our hero. Furious, one of the students told William about Tyler and Emma's absence from the dorm overnight. He replied that their team had completed an important task and received their reward. Literally at that very moment, the brother and sister appeared with a huge cart of boxes. Calling out to Dale, Tyler said that they had exchanged all the money they had received from the hospital for the essence of life. The hero praised his friends for their good work. Then he rose from his seat and, wishing the others good luck in their training, left the training ground. A little later, the whole company moved to the zone of the 5 elements. Michelle said that this place will be at their complete disposal until the tournament. All this time, Tyler and Emma were hastily absorbing flasks of essence, the amount they were consuming causing concern in the girl. But the hero explained that this was normal, and without the essence, the two could have died from exhaustion. He then explained the nature of his flame and the monster's genes, and suggested a way to enhance her genes. Michelle trusted him, so she quickly accepted his offer. Dale promptly injected her with a small amount of his monster genes. And then, at her request, he explained how exactly it works. Their joint training continued for a whole week. One such evening, Dale informed Roger that he had already managed to turn all the students of the Monster Academy into his test subjects. This also meant that the risk of them turning into monsters was significantly reduced, which was good news. Roger, in turn, said that he had found someone who would play the role of the blue flame during the tournament, distracting attention. Our hero didn't hear any more details, as his phone suddenly died. At that very moment, the lights on all floors of the dormitory suddenly went out. But just a couple of seconds later, everything returned to normal. When the hero entered the room, he confirmed his guess that this was directly related to Senia. She trained her domain and finally managed to achieve some progress. Now her domain was operating in passive mode, like a perpetual motion machine, but was absorbing energy uncontrollably. To some extent, Xenia now understood Dale. She wanted to suck out all the electricity from the academy. As soon as the guy hinted that she could do it without any problems, Roger appeared at the door. His quick appearance certainly surprised the guys, but the man could no longer ignore the rapidly growing bills. So he asked them both to follow him. On the way, they stopped by to pick up Tyler and Emma. The hero tried to find out where they were all going, but the man did not answer. So they got to the car, where he announced that they would immediately go to the city where the tournament would be held. Dale was concerned that the car could easily break down or stall due to Ksenia's instability. The man promised to pay for the repairs and everything necessary, if only they would leave here quickly. Beatrice was previously assigned to accompany Dale and his team, so now she was behind the wheel of the car and waiting for Roger to bring her future companions. Dale and the guys didn't keep her waiting long. Having climbed inside, he warned her about the danger of the journey ahead. But the girl was completely confident in her abilities and offendedly asked not to underestimate her. When they pulled out onto the highway, she was surprised to see that all the cars around them simply stopped. Dale explained that Xenia is currently absorbing electricity, causing damage to nearby cars. He also mentioned that she was barely holding back from having this problem affect their car as well. Despite the girl's best efforts to control herself, the car malfunctioned and they went off the planned route. And now they were falling down the cliff at full speed. Tyler and Emma were overcome with horror at what was happening, but Dale didn't feel a drop of fear. He just smiled contentedly. They would have ended badly indeed if it weren't for Beatrice's air control ability. Thanks to this, they were able to continue their journey, but this time by air. Meanwhile, the liquidators in City B, where the heroes were heading, were carrying out another mission to destroy a group of monsters. The squad's captain, Oscar, possessed a powerful lightning element and planned to attack the monsters once they were trapped. To boost his attack, he drew energy from a nearby nuclear power plant. Just at the moment of concentrating his power, he and everyone else noticed a car appearing in the air. When all of Oscar's savings disappeared at once, he immediately suspected something was wrong and asked his partner for help. He was perplexed by what was happening and didn't even know what he could do in this situation. Then Oscar reported that someone in this car had stolen all of his energy. As the monsters got closer and closer, Oscar gathered the rest of his strength and attacked, while Leon helped him, covering the rear. Even though he only used about 1% of his power, the monsters were no match for their combined attack. But there were too many monsters for the two of them, and due to the failure of the original plan, there was a risk that the monsters would enter the city. So Leon decided to go to extreme measures and use monster sacrifice. But he barely had time to do anything when the car suddenly fell down straight into the crowd of monsters. And the next moment, a powerful whirlwind appeared out of nowhere, swallowing up all the monsters. Leon immediately recognized the strength of one of the Academy's outstanding students, Beatrice, but he couldn't understand when she had become so strong. Oscar was puzzled as to why there was no trace of his lightning bolts left on her. Meanwhile, Dale decided to take advantage of the moment and have some refreshments, asking Xenia to cover for him. Beatrice, however, spared no effort in using her powers to the fullest. Thus, an entire horde of monsters was destroyed in a matter of minutes, right before the eyes of the liquidators. When everything was finished, Leon suggested going and meeting the guests from the Academy. Beatrice was the first to notice their approach, so, after apologizing for the interruption, she informed them who she was and the purpose of their visit to the city. Leon did not hide his admiration for her strength, and thanked her for her help in destroying the monsters. Then he offered to take them to their place of residence for the duration of the tournament. Soon, Xenia approached them along with Tyler and Emma. When the man asked if there were any wounded among them and offered to help, Xenia refused, saying that she had poor self-control. As soon as Leon took a few steps towards her, she suddenly recoiled, and then she said that she was about to lose control again. The next moment, in confirmation of her words, the entire field around her was covered by her domain, and Oscar noticed how streams of electricity from the station flowed toward the girl's body. What struck him was that she didn't use either the star map or the guide weapon, but simply absorbed energy. Observing this, Leon was able to guess that the girl in front of them was the very same newly minted genius with a large percentage of hero genes. They had previously been instructed to relocate the team to the outskirts of the city so that it could not absorb energy from the nuclear power plant. But now they had to act differently, since the great distance could not hinder her and, on the contrary, brought harm. None of them had any doubts that the Hero Academy would take first place in the tournament this year. Having had his fill, the hero gave a barely audible signal to his friend. Immediately after this, Xenia stopped absorbing energy and said that she had now managed to take control of her power. Oscar was just about to announce the need to settle closer to the station when he froze, feeling a terrifying pressure. He was not the only one who felt this. Both liquidators were expecting the monster to appear, but Dale emerged from behind a mountain of rocks, cheerfully greeting them. Beatrice noticed how both liquidators tensed up with his appearance, but she didn't understand the reasons. So I tried to defuse the situation by approaching Dale and introducing him. Having finished with all the greetings, Leon finally suggested moving to a more convenient location, so they all went together to the City B. Along the way, Dale noted that the city was under heavy guard by the liquidators' headquarters, but knowledge of the future made him doubt whether the local leaders of the organization had gone over to the side of the monsters. As soon as they were settled into a new house, our hero left his friends to train, and he himself disguised himself and went on surveillance. As soon as he left the house, he ran into Oscar. He furiously vented his anger at the fact that he had lost in strength to some first-year student. It was by following him that our hero decided to begin, considering him one of the suspects. But after just a couple of minutes of observation, Dale came to the conclusion that, with his star fever, Oscar was not capable of betrayal. Throughout their journey, he became more and more convinced. Eventually, Dale became convinced that this guy was just a simpleton, but he didn't dare stop following him, hoping that he would be able to find some clues. When Oscar headed into the forest, he became noticeably wary. A couple of dozen kilometers later, they reached the city border, where Oscar's detachment had taken up residence. The number of liquidators present here surprised Dale and gave rise to certain suspicions. When Oscar approached his partner with the promised chicken, the latter reported that he was being followed. Hearing this, he immediately drew his sword and tried to locate the enemy. Leon helped him by blocking the escape routes with the wind. The enemy would not be able to escape unnoticed without being affected by the air currents. But Dale was well aware of this, so he chose to simply stay where he was. Luckily for him, at that moment an alarm went off at the other edge of the city, signaling the approach of a monster. Here, other liquidators reported that a whole column of unidentified vehicles had entered the city. In this situation, Oscar and Leon had no time to worry about their pursuer. They needed to quickly figure out what was happening. Dale decided not to follow them any further. He already had something to think about. He had expected the Flame Lord to appear in this city, but it was too early for that. He was suddenly pulled out of his thoughts by the feeling of someone approaching. Right in front of him, as if out of nowhere, the Lord of Flame appeared.